That's hilarious.
Hey, Jeff.
Chairman Silverman?
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, is, we're going to be doing a PowerPoint. That just wasn't noted on here.
Oh, no problem. Okay. Okay, can everyone please take their seats? Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Finance and Corporate Services Committee. It's 11 o'clock, and we'll get underway. We have some very important items here today. We'll begin with the consent items. Can I get a mover for the consent items? Moved by Councillor Ioannidis. 1 second. Okay. Councillor Guzzola on the consent items?
Yeah, I was going to move them.
Oh, you're going to move them? Okay.
But I also have a question. That's the reason. Yeah.
You have a question on the consent items?
Yes.
Okay, that does require a motion to bring them out of consent. Is it on both or?
Yes.
On both, okay. So as moved by
It's a very
Councillor...
simple question.
Sorry?
It's a very simple question.
Very simple
Go
question.
ahead, have your vote. Yeah. I just wanted to know, we do receive details when we're dealing with tax write-offs, and I wondered if it were not possible to get details with these two write-offs, a little more details.
Okay. I thought...
Sometimes councilors recognize a name or something that they feel maybe shouldn't be on the list. So.
Right. Okay. Looking to staff to respond. Oh, sorry, yes, we have to do a vote first, pardon me. Before we answer that question, sorry, Councillor Guzzola, we have to take that motion. The motion is to take items out of consent. Those in favor? And those opposed? That carries actually unanimously, sorry. And who would speak to that? I thought I recalled looking over these. They might have come in a separate package. I don't recall, though. Ms. McDonald?
Yes, I believe Council has received an email about this same inquiry in the past, and I'm happy to send it out again.
Okay, Councillor Guzzola, are you okay with that? So staff will send out an email, and if you find anything that's out of the ordinary, we can discuss again at Council.
This was months ago, I believe, not recently, but we'll send out a new email to Council.
It was sent out, okay. Sorry, can you repeat that? Pardon me. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm asking for information relating to these two items that we're dealing with today.
So the previous email that went out advised council that in fact you do receive the details as it relates to tax information, but as it relates to utilities, you don't receive that information because it's usually personal information, and that's been the protocol that we've been following up until now.
Well, the tax information is personal also. What is the difference?
But under the Municipal Act, there's an expectation.
Pardon?
Under the Municipal Act, there's an expectation that council actually be aware of what those matters are as it relates to taxes.
Okay, does the Municipal Act say that we cannot receive this information for these? It's all part of our city business. We're in more than the business of taxation.
So the utility business is considered under freedom of information as being personal to the individual. So up until now, the practice has been not to provide that to council.
So it's not a law, it's just a practice that we've followed here. I thought in the past we had seen that information. Transparency. I'm not asking that it be issued publicly, but as members of the board of directors, I think we have a right to see that.
Okay, I think a little more information would be useful. If you could just follow up with a quick email on the rationale for that,
we'll
appreciate
follow
it.
up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Fernandez?
Yeah, just an understanding on the utility accounts. What percentage do we actually collect? Once it goes to a collection agency, what percentage do we collect? Is it 50%? Do we track that at all?
Ms. McDonald?
I'll have to follow up with staff and finance and get back to you with that information.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, my guess would be much less than 50%, but okay. So the two consent items had been moved by Councillor Ioannidis. Those in favor? And that carries unanimously. We'll get right into...
Vote, Mr. Etheridge.
We'll get right into item number 3, discussion item.
Thank you.
We have Ms. Mary Jan Patterson.
Good morning, friends. It's a pleasure to be here, and with me is Dave Blake, Associate Director at REAP Green Solutions. And we are really pleased, Chair Davey, Mayor Barry, councillors, staff, and visitors, to present to you our report to the community for 2017. Building
Sorry, Ms. Patterson, could you just hold on for just 1 second? Excuse me, sir, if you'd like to register as a delegate... If you'd like to register as a delegation for any particular item, you can speak to the clerk, but until then I would ask that you please be quiet when other people are speaking. Thank you. Sorry, Ms. Patterson, please continue.
And our theme is Building Sustainable Lives Together, and I hope you'll know why as you read the stories within it and hear from us today. REAP Green Solutions is an environmental charity. We help people live sustainably. 4 simple goals guide our work. Show people how to live sustainably with our home evaluations, our REAP house, and our workshops. More and more we are doing, as you see on the front cover of the report, where you see a work party in process, helping people get things in the ground or installed in the house. Connecting, it's part of belonging and part of building lives together, helping neighbors support and learn from each other. And building support is one way we resource this work through donations and volunteer opportunities. Our revenue is a combination of grants, fee-for-service, and donations, and underlying all of that is the essential foundation of you or our core funders. Without the core funding that you provide, none of this in the report would exist. So we want to say a very big thank you to you, City of Kitchener councillors, for supporting environmental action in your community. REAP Green Solutions co-leads our climate action plan with Sustainable Waterloo Region, and we've just done a midterm inventory. We're at 5.2% towards our goal of 6%, and we see one thing coming out very strongly in this progress report, and that is that transportation now makes up 49% of our emissions in Waterloo Region. So that is significant. We want to thank you for your support of climate action and let you know that you'll be seeing a long-term target, a proposed target, and some options coming to you in the spring. We've been consulting over the last time period about that over the summer and the fall, and we're going to bring to you the recommendations we've heard in the community. Emissions from waste are part of our local carbon footprint, and this year REAP held our second annual Zero Waste Challenge. Did anybody here participate in the Zero Waste Challenge? Excellent. That's great to see, Councillor Fernandez. It was a lot of fun. We had 89 people and 25 pets participating this year. And I guess I could say that I really believe in something when I'm willing to let a photo of me in my pajamas be part of our marketing campaign, as you see up there. The Rain Smart Neighborhoods project is something we would love to tell you more about if we had more time. It is only in Kitchener, only in 2 neighborhoods for 3 years, working with residents to manage rain where it falls. It's funded by Trillium, and it's a great example of leveraging city resources, providing a $6 return for every $1 invested by the City of Kitchener. So far, there's over 50 homeowner-led projects underway or completed, from soakaways to rain gardens. And on the front cover, you see a work party underway to implement one of those. It's a great example also of Show, Do, Connect.
The opportunity for homeowners in the City of Kitchener to receive incentives are funded by the province, continues to drive action. Of the 220 homes, the completed renovations in the 12-month reporting period, 47 were in Kitchener, saving more than 60 tons of emissions. But spending $350,000 here locally in renovations, so keeping that funding here in the city. Those numbers are increasing in Kitchener. So in the first 7 months since the end of our fiscal year, 70 homes have now actually completed, an additional 70 homes now completed renovations. The challenge for residents in the City of Kitchener is that these incentives are expected to end at some point in time in 2018 from when the funding from the province has been spent. We will continue to promote these incentives, and we ask for your support in getting the message out and engaging with the province as we look towards the future for Kitchener. The REAP House for Sustainable Living is the hub of our work in the heart of Kitchener through workshops, tours, and events. In 2017, as a couple of examples, we had an electric vehicle cruise night. We also had a workshop on Not Your Grandfather's Heat Pump. We'll continue to have workshops at the REAP House at least twice a month, and they are funded in part through donations of participants. But the REAP House remains largely unfunded directly. Our next workshops are Make Your Own Wrapping Paper and Cards Sustainably on December the 9th, and a REAP House Christmas on December the 13th. When we look ahead, here are 3 examples of program development that we are pursuing. Curriculum-connected education for grades 5 to 8 in the area of science and technology. We're looking to create a program for an underserved community, people who live in multi-unit residential buildings looking to collect their organic waste. And we're also looking for opportunities to depave paradise, sort of an anti-Joni Mitchell kind of song. Places where schools, churches, and businesses would like to remove asphalt and replace it with green space or a garden. So how can you help? A lot of what we do is enabled by the core funding that we receive annually. It enables us to develop new programs for the residents of Kitchener, to promote the inclusion of the residents of Kitchener in provincially funded programs, and to have capacity to find funding and bring programs to this community, such as Kitchener's Rain Smart Neighborhood, which, as Mary Jane had stated, provides a 6-to-1 return on the city's investment. Also, Kitchener Utilities has been sending out bill inserts to promote the home renter rebate, and we have been seeing an increased action by homeowners in the City of Kitchener, but anything you can do to keep this program in the forefront of your constituents would be appreciated.
In closing, we'd like to say a very big thank you to councillors and also to the city staff that we work with every day for your commitment to climate action and environmental stewardship. And I would like to invite you all to the REAP House. Could I ask who here has been to the REAP House? That's great. Well, I would love to show you the new things and others your first glimpse of the REAP House, so I'll follow up with you on that. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you for your presentation. We actually have 7 people in the queue to ask questions, so if you need a drink of water or something, let us know. Councillor Haines.
Thank you, Chair Davey. Thanks for your presentation, and again, all the great work you guys do, your organization. It's really a great a testament to this community and how we're trying to get green and help our environment. So my one question is basically just dealing with these rebates that I'm seeing here that's in partnership with Union Gas. So how does an individual collect these rebates? Like, because I'm looking here at the smart thermostat. Does someone have to go and get an audit to get a smart thermostat, or?
Good question.
Well, so specifically, the way the incentive program works is that there are a requirement to make more than one change. Things such as the smart thermostats, there are other avenues for people to actually receive those through other provincial or ISO funded programs. The way this program works is you get your evaluation, it sets the roadmap as far as changes you need to make, and then you need to make a couple of changes out of the two areas. And then as part of that, you would get essentially a flyer for the thermostat in order for you to get the $100 off as part of that process.
Okay. Oh, that's all good. Okay, too bad the program wasn't extended longer, but thanks to them anyways, and thanks to you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fernandez?
Yes, thanks, Mary Jane, and I always want to call you Patrick. Sorry. I don't know why. Thanks for bringing in some good news, and when it's appropriate, I'd like to move the motion.
Very good.
But I do have a couple of questions. So you were talking about the rain gardens and how you have 2 neighborhoods that are presently actively involved in that. How do you think we can spread the word on that? Because I know that it fits very well with our stormwater implementation plan and the way that our engineering staff want to get more people to absorb ways to absorb the rain instead of it rushing off the rooftops and the driveways. So, yeah, just some advice or some suggestions on that?
Sure. Well, one of the things we've been able to do is get funding from Trillium that allows us to offer an incentive program in those 2 neighborhoods. And we're working with the city to study the results of that. How is it working? What is needed? We're seeing, for example, that a lot more support from a rain coach is needed than we anticipated. We thought there might be 1 visit, and we're seeing people who are asking for 2 or 3 conversations that help them along the process of implementing these kinds of things. So we're going to be able to feed that information back to the city, and then a couple ways. The city could hire REAP. The city and REAP could apply for further funding. The FCM, for example, might be an opportunity to apply for funding to go more broadly based on the results of this pilot in the 2 communities.
Okay. So you're seeing that people are interested, but it requires, as you say, a coach to help people work through the process, because it's not just as simple as, pulling up sod and maybe laying down a couple layers of gravel and letting plants grow, is it?
That's right. And one thing that's interesting to us is that there's more do-it-yourselfers than we anticipated. So I think people are appreciating the incentive and then wanting to do as much of the rest themselves. They're using it for the materials and maybe the design.
Okay, I think it is important for us to partner with you guys. I think you definitely have the expertise around the rain gardens. I mean, and because you are so often in people's homes and they're on their properties, I think you probably see things that we may not see, and ways of helping people to be more energy efficient, both with their water and their heat. And the other, I thought it was very interesting that you said you had an electric car cruise night. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, this was great. It was in the Schneider House parking lot. We had 20 different electric vehicles, from this kind of Tesla down to the Bolt, Leaf. All of the different ones were there. And so a lot of owners and then a lot of people who wanted to check them out. They were all there with the doors open and people could sit inside and have a look. There was an electric motorcycle. Very interesting. So there was a lot of interest in people bringing their children too. I think kids were part of the impetus for parents to come.
That's great fun for them to people were allowing other people to get into their cars and see how they worked. And have you seen, and this may not be an appropriate question for you, so just say so if it isn't, have you seen, or do you help encourage land developers of commercial businesses to install electric charging stations?
We do that through Climate Action WR, which is one of our programs. So the Transportation Sector Committee really works on that to enable that kind of thing and support, even writing letters of support for projects that will go in.
Okay. Well, thanks for all the work that you do, and certainly hope that this passes unanimously, because the amount of work that you guys do for the dollars that you get is phenomenal. And thanks again for all the work you do.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Councillor Singh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you both for the presentation. It's always good to get a refresh of all the great work that we've continues to do in the community. Just want to give compliments to that effort and bringing foremost to our attention and the community's attention the importance of conservation and being environmentally mindset. Just looking at your financials, I had some questions there though. Saw a drastic difference from last year to this for fee for service. Any issue or reason for that, or is that the trend? It seems it's coming down. Or?
Well, the fee-for-service increase was really driven by the increased incentives that were available.
So no, it's decreased. Oh no, it's increased. Yeah, never mind.
Yes.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, it was the increased line.
Yeah.
So that was driven by that. The contracts, which was a decrease, that was essentially driven by the end of a contract, which I recall.
Is it the Energy Coach?
No, the Energy Coach would have been under federal funding. Okay. So. It might have been the end of or the final delivery of some rain-based programming as well.
Now, so because of that, and it's a good news story, the increase in fee for service, is that the trend that we're seeing? Is the federal government coming to the table with more dollars with their retrofit programs that previously that they had, or?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's really a major area of our focus, is trying to continue to grow the fee-for-service and the contract-based delivery of programs. But really, directly, it's going to be tied to the ability for people to have those incremental incentives to act, specifically around the home energy efficiency. In 2013, we delivered 50 audits in the calendar year. This past October, we did 58.
Oh, very good.
So the numbers are on that trajectory, and while that funding still is there, we expect that's going to continue going forward.
And I'll just add to that, this is something for Kitchener in particular to be watchful of, because the province is choosing to put its investment through existing programs of the big natural gas utilities.
Very good.
So we said, how about Kitchener? And they came back and said, okay, we'll ask Union Gas to serve Kitchener. And that money will run out, as Dave said, sometime in this coming year. So there may continue to be incentives for Waterloo and Cambridge customers of Union Gas.
So even if a customer is a City of Kitchener resident that may be on Kitchener Utility for paying for gas, they can, if they're doing retrofits in their house, getting a new furnace, they could still apply and get the Union Gas credit.
They can right now.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That's excellent. Very good. Thank you again for the good work that you guys are doing. Mr. Chair, I had a question of staff, so I don't know if you want me to ask now or come back in after?
Wait till afterwards, please. Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, and thank you for all the great work that you're doing, just to echo comments already made. So just to follow up on the line of questioning there about these incentives that are going to run out in 2018, what needs to be done to make sure that those can continue for City of Kitchener residents?
We're going to be as loud a voice as we can. Every budget consultation, we ask it to be available for all fuels, all types of homes. And I think we'd like to invite the city to join us in advocacy for this with the province. I've met with Diane Verneil on several occasions about it, and have met with the Energy Minister, brought it up to the Energy Minister also. So we'll keep advocating and keep the city posted through the right avenue to do that.
Yeah, that sounds good, and we can loop in with our Kitchen Utilities leadership.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to meeting the new director and having a chance to sit down and talk about it too.
Okay, super. So as one of the, I represent one of the two neighborhoods that was lucky enough to be a part of the Rain Smart program, and I've had so many positive comments about, what a great program it is. So thank you for that, and we'll continue to spread the word, because I know that there's still yet more.
Yes, one more year left in the program from this spring onward. So
perfect. And thank you for the challenge to do the Zero Waste Challenge. Our family has not yet signed up, but I'll keep working on my family to. It has to be a group effort, not just me by myself. And but considering the fact that the community's priorities really have spoken loud and clear over the years that environmental initiatives to become more sustainable are super important to Kitchener residents, I am happy to wholeheartedly support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Yaneski.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and I'm prepared to support your request for the funding, which I think goes to a very worthy cause that you're involved with. I have a question. Before I ask the question, I also was curious because I'm involved with cruise nights as well, and the cruise vehicles that you had, these would be all modern vehicles, basically brand new. Is that basically the way they came, or were they converted from older ones?
I think I understood your question. There's a little bit of a blurring coming through for me here, but there was one BMW that was retrofitted from the 60s or 50s. Were you asking if there were any retrofitted vehicles in addition?
Yeah. I assume most of them were brand new that have come on the market, but I'm just wondering whether they took an older car and retrofitted it some way.
There was one battery-filled, really interesting-looking BMW that was about 40 years old, I think, or 50 or maybe older, that was fascinating to everybody there. The whole back hatch part was full of battery.
Okay. On your financial report, I'm a little confused when I look at the statistics, and then I look at this is on page 3-20 of our reports, and on the bottom left corner, you've got the revenue sources broken down in percentages. And so you've got foundations, federal funding, provincial, and then local. Of course, local's at 23%. And yet I'm confused when I look at the top of the chart, and there's a revenue of all four groups of $290,000 plus in terms of the dollars that you received. Yet you're getting $30,000 from the city. Is that correct?
From the City of Kitchener, yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, if we're only providing you $30,000, and then we're at 23%, then you go to look at the contracts, which is at 18%, and then you look at the top of the chart, it's at $110,000. That doesn't. The comparisons just don't match. Am I missing something, or what?
The 23% of local funding is from the four core funders that Mary Jane had mentioned. So, City of Kitchener, Cambridge, Region of Waterloo, and Waterloo North Hydro. So that's why, as part of that local funding number, so when you add all those together, it comes out to be about $144,000 between them. So that's why that number is higher than what the contract number is.
Okay, that's the answer I was looking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Rabinovich.
Thank you very much, and thank you to both of you for coming in and for the great partnership and the great work that REAP continues to do. Also take this opportunity to congratulate you in front of council, Mary Jane. For those of you who don't know, Mary Jane received one of 4 community awards that were presented by the University of Waterloo on Saturday night at their 60th anniversary celebration. And in fact, all 4 had an affiliation with Kitchener, which was, I have to kind of say, the mayor of Waterloo noted it as Waterloo South to me. I said, well, we'll call it Kitchener, thank you very much. But I just wanted to follow up with one question, and that was the program that we're doing, that Kitchener Utilities is doing in conjunction with you and Union Gas. Did you say it was continuing beyond this year, or it ends on December the 31st?
No, it's continuing into 2018. It's a bit of a complicated program. So the charts, the piece of paper you have there in front of you says it ends the end of this year. What ends the end of this year is the electrical component.
Gotcha.
So in order to us to have to sort of, rather than creating 19 different flyers that some expire here and some expire there, we chose this approach. So those ones will expire. Those were funded directly by the IESO. So they will expire at the end of this year. There's still a possibility they may extend, but the other funding, which was from the province and Union Gas, was a 3-year commitment starting in 2016. So 2016, 2017, 2018. That's why we're looking to 2018 for that funding.
Super, fantastic. Thank you. And I will be supporting the motion that Councillor Fernandez has indicated that she'll move later on. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Gazzola.
Thank you. I'm trying to understand, we're spending almost $500,000 on that program that you say that we get a return of 6 to 1. Can you just tell me a little bit, how does that benefit? Who benefits from that $500,000?
That's the Trillium program, and a good part of that, I think about 60,000, is incentives for residents in that area to put in soak-away pits, rain gardens, and this is the kind of thing that really benefits from a neighborhood approach, because people see front yards of their neighbors, and we know from the city's own stormwater master plan that neighbors talk to neighbors about what they've done in their front yard or their backyard. And so this neighborhood approach is something new. We're kind of on the front lines in Canada on this, working with neighbors, talking to each other. We had a big first prize of $10,000 front yard makeover funded by Trillium for this, and that got everybody's attention. And now neighbors are looking at those transformed front yards and doing similar things in the backyards too. So some are demonstration projects that are intended to show people, and others are incentives for no matter whether it's the front or the backyard. And from that, we're putting together recommendations for the city for the rest of the neighborhoods. And we're also creating a framework that will be issued across Canada and shared with through our partners at the university for other municipalities to know how to take a neighborhood approach.
So individuals have earned some $300,000 out of this.
Individuals have?
Yes, you say 60% of it.
About $60,000 was for the incentives, and the rest of it is for the work involved over 3 years of working with these neighborhoods and for materials, supplies, etc.
Okay, I'm not sure I totally understand, but I'll leave that. The $25,000 that the city gives, is that part of the $30,000, or is it over and above the $30,000?
It's over and above it, and we talked to all 3 cities when we were making this application. Kitchener was the only city in a position to make a 3-year commitment. So Waterloo and Cambridge were not able to participate in this and have asked about it before. So it's the only way to bring funding to our community if we can show some small amount of matching funding.
Okay, so the full amount of $500,000 is being spent in Kitchener then?
That's correct.
Yeah. Do you get it? I notice a number of your board are from the universities. Mm-hmm. Do you get any funding from the universities?
We don't get direct funding. We do get support for co-op positions. We've had a couple co-op positions this past year that the Faculty of Environment covered the cost of. The board members provide tremendous support through their time, which is given on behalf of the university and then their own time in addition. And then we have an awful lot of back and forth. We have about 13 students who are doing a project this year, are getting academic credit this year for volunteering with us. So they're writing blogs, they're planning our events like the cruise night, they're bolstering our website, they're the street team out there for climate action. So we get a lot of capacity from the university.
Okay. You have not provided us with any actual information, financial information for this year. Is that not available? You're on a fiscal year, but it's more than 2/3 completed. Is there any financial information? And the second part of this, you haven't really provided us with a 2018 budget to see how it all fits together. Is it possible to get that?
Do you want to take this? I'll answer that. We can provide you a budget for the year to date if you would like, status of where we're at, and we will be bringing a draft budget to our board in January, and it'll be approved in March for the beginning of our fiscal year in April 1st. So we're not there yet for the budget for next year. So what we've given you is the most recent audited information that we have.
Shouldn't you be providing that for us? We're discussing our 2018 budget. Should we not have your budget also with us? It may not have been approved by the board, but it would be what's being taken to the board.
Yeah, we the timing of the presentation here is of your budget process is a little out of whack with our budget process.
Okay, I'll final question. Why are you on a fiscal year as opposed to a calendar year?
We found that the cities were able to confirm their funding, and the municipalities, in January, February, sometimes even March. And if we had already begun the year in January, then if we were not receiving the funding, we would have to immediately let staff go. So in order to make a contract where we know what we're able to commit to, we have to know the funding is secured. And a couple times the funding has been in question. I would say our budget is a little miracle every year that's completely different every year based on the projects we've been able to bring in. And as best we can, we want to give our staff the certainty that we have the funding confirmed for this year when we give them a contract.
Thank you. Just a question of the chair. You're not going to take a vote on this, are you?
We are taking a vote on this, yes.
Isn't this the same as all of the budget discussions we've had for the last 2 weeks? Why would we take a vote here? That failed.
This is not part of this is an item in this committee. It's not part of our budget package.
It's part of the budget process.
Sorry?
It's part of the budget process.
No, very common do we take a vote in committee and refer it to the budget process. So it still would be subject to the budget process, but we're taking a vote on this.
I think that's called sucking and blowing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Davey. I think it's just terrific that your RaySmart program, for every dollar the city has contributed, you're able to get $6 more in that. So great work on that. Just out of my own personal interest, after a citizen has a home audit done, do you have any kind of ballpark range of savings that they might expect to have once that's completed? And I know there's some great environmental benefits as well, but for their investment, what might they see in return?
It's one of those your mileage may vary kind of answers. It really kind of depends on what the homeowner is doing. What we have been seeing is from an energy savings perspective, or modeled savings, somewhere in the 20 to 25% range is what we're seeing. Wow. But it will depend, if you're going from a mid-efficiency furnace to a high-efficiency furnace and insulating your basement, your numbers are going to be a lot higher. If you're going from a low-high to a high-high furnace and replacing a bunch of windows, your number is going to likely be lower than that, right? So it does vary, but that's the numbers that we've been seeing is in sort of the 20 to 25% range.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thanks again. Thank you kindly for coming in. I will also offer my support for this, no question. Thank you kindly. And we do have a couple questions of staff. Councillor Singh.
Still there, if you don't mind, if I just ask a clarification from them. And then I'm going to follow up with staff. If we all were to look at page 3 of the booklet that you provided, it just shows from 2016 April to March 2017, 220 homes completed energy upgrades, 1.9 million spent locally, 787 conversation with homeowners, 290 wet challenge home visits. That's phenomenal. This is my perspective anyways. We have our stormwater utility. We have a grant program through that utility that incentivizes or works with homeowners to do efforts on their own property, and then they can reap benefits by, no pun intended, to offset some of the costs that they have to pay for the utility. But again, we struggle with that program. We have for many years since its inception, and I think that's partly because of the aspect of marketing or getting that information out there to the public. Yet you guys are doing a really good job with a fraction of the costs, really, and operating available to you guys. Again, I'm just asking a question in generality. This is something I'll follow up with staff as well, and I'm going to ask them this question. If this was a program that was partnered with REAP, would REAP even have a capacity to work with a city or a size of that magnitude?
Do you mean to roll out the smart neighborhoods across the city?
I'm talking about the perhaps the grant process that the stormwater utility has.
The credit program?
Yes.
Yes.
Was that a conversation ever had with the city in partnership?
We haven't thought of it. Do you mean for REAP to administer the credit program?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we haven't thought of it.
Okay.
No.
All right.
No, we would.
Well, anyways, just reflection on page 3. You guys are doing a wonderful job. So I'll ask my question of staff. My first is, I'll focus on my initial question that I had, looking at the financials of what City of Kitchener pays. I'm assuming that's capital or current from our tax base. Is that correct?
Sorry?
The 30,000 that we pay.
The 30,000?
That we fund REAP. That's paid out of our tax base. Just want to confirm that.
I believe it's from Environmental Committee, but who would like to... Not seeing anyone... Oh, Mr. Clerk.
Sure. Through you, Chair, and this has been budgeted through the Legislative Services budget for $30,000, with the additional $450 to be covered by the tax base.
So, and follow that?
Legislative Services budget and the additional $450 coming from tax base.
Legislative services, but that's funded through the tax base. So ultimately, 30,000 comes from the tax base.
Yes.
That was my question. Have we considered ultimately funding it through our Kitchener Utilities enterprise? And the reason why I'm asking is obviously with the cap and trade program that we have, and part of that program, I think again, the details are still not certain yet, but I think there's a provision where the local municipality or group can do work and offset some of those costs, where I see this direct translation of this funding that goes to an organization like REAP would very much impact our carbon footprint. Has there been a link considered? Excuse me.
Ms. Fletcher?
Through the chair, I can follow up on discussions with staff. I know that one of our staff is working on a regional initiative around greenhouse gas reduction. I know that staff are working on offset programs for the carbon utility as well, but I don't have those details with me.
Okay, today. I appreciate that. I would look forward to getting some of that information. And as part of that, so again, would there be any issue if the funding were to come from Kitchener Utilities? It's all the same pot, but again, it makes a better connection from the cap and trade program perspective anyways, if that is a direction that we perhaps may be heading.
Mr. Chapman?
Through the chair, what we provided in the past, and maybe we can provide it again, is a history of the other funding that's been paid to REAP. I know Kitchener Utilities has funded programs directly to the point you've raised, as well as the stormwater utility. And I think typically that's been where it's a specific program that relates to the utility that's funding it. I know this funding that you're dealing with today represents the core organizational funding, and so it's not tied to any one program area. So we'll come back with that information, but I'd suggest historically where the utilities have funded, it's been where REAP is delivering a program that relates to that utility.
And I appreciate that. Perhaps some leading up to the budget date, some background, what assistance Kitchener Utilities as well as Stormwater may be doing already may be helpful, because I may revisit this suggestion at that point of reconsideration of where the monies come from ultimately. So if that information can be provided before budget. And I look forward to talking to staff further regarding the credit program through the stormwater utility and seeing if there's opportunity for partnerships with not-for-profit organizations like REAP out there, which perhaps can do a better job and getting that message out there and broadening that program. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the queue? Councillor Fernandez to move the motion.
Yeah, I wanted to move, I was going to move the motion, but Councillor Singh raises a bit of a concerning point in that if we fund it from a different entity, would that put the core funding for REAP at risk every single year? I mean, now we know what's coming out of capital out of current, and it's pretty much embedded in our budget process. Would anybody be able to answer that at this moment or not?
Yeah, I think I would suggest that, well, number one, I think staff's going to come back with some information, but more importantly, at the end of the day, council will make that decision. And I think if the funding is ever in jeopardy, I'm sure the good folks from REAP will come right back here and say, hey, what's going on here? So, like you should. So I don't think it would be any more in jeopardy coming from utility than if it was out of the tax base, because at the end of the day, we make the decision.
Okay. So I'm happy to move the motion for the funding and recognizing that we have not approved our full budget yet. REAP has been an integral part of our community for I want to say 10 years, but I mean, Mary Jane may correct me on that. They bring in so many more stakeholders. Every year I hear about more stakeholders that are coming in and being involved, and, you know, notwithstanding our own city, our utilities, but, you know, through questioning about the stakeholders from the university and the fact that we're engaging students in co-op programs, in coaching programs. I think that this is one of the many groups in our community who do such great work on a very slim dollar. And, you know, I mean, I know when you look at the budget and you see, you know, a couple $100,000, as a citizen you may think, wow, that's really high. But the amount of actual work that gets done is pretty impressive. So I also, on behalf of Kitchener Blooms, I do want to thank REAP for supporting the with the watering can donation towards the environmentally sustainable garden that was honored at Kitchener Blooms in the fall. Unfortunately, I wasn't there. So I'm happy to move this, and I'll ask for a recorded vote as well.
Very good. Councillor Marsh, comment?
Yeah, just further to Councillor Singh's suggestion that we look at different options for funding source, I would like to just add that we look into whether or not Tier 1 funding would be more suitable, because then perhaps REAP staff would not have to question whether or not this funding is going to be more annual. And yeah, so that's it.
Hopefully staff can include that as part of the response. Okay, very good. Moved by Councillor Fernandez, and a recorded vote has been called. And that's carried unanimously. Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move on to item number 4, just a minor thing, just all of the strategic actions that we're working on at the City of Kitchener at the moment. For presentation, Ms. Major.
Good morning, Chair Davey and members of the Finance and Corporate Services Committee. I'm here today to share the strategic actions that the corporate leadership team is recommending to be included in the 2018 Corporate Business Plan. The City of Kitchener has been doing business plans for more than 10 years, and over that time the City's made some significant improvements in the planning process and the information that's used as a basis for decision making. In my own experience, over the past 5 years, we've gained a better understanding of the available capacity within the organization. We've built a stronger connection between the corporate strategic plan and the business plan. Staff have become better at planning and managing projects, and we've introduced greater transparency and accountability for results. The business planning process starts within individual divisions. It's guided by the leadership of our department heads, and the recommended priorities are set by the corporate leadership team. And of course, today we're here to get Council's approval on that plan. Status updates are provided to Council and the public every 4 months, and at the end of the year, we report on the performance of our 44 core services. Without question, there is always more work that could be done to create a more innovative, caring, and vibrant Kitchener than we have the resources to accomplish. So it's important to make decisions about priorities and expected results that we can be sure we're doing the right things. By working through a process of planning out our work in advance, sharing that information across the organization, it allows for decisions to be made at all levels that will improve those plans before they are approved. We bring the plan to Council to demonstrate transparency and accountability for what we do and how well we were doing. Most importantly, This plan helps us understand what we can actually accomplish with the resources that we have, and it supports us in finishing what we start before we take on anything new. The primary driver for the strategic actions on the list is the City of Kitchener's strategic plan, which was approved by Council in 2015. It encompasses 5 key themes that help us determine where to invest our time, energy, and resources in a way that will have the greatest impact on the quality of life for citizens. The strategic actions that you approve today represent the City's commitment to put those priorities into action. 2018 is the last year of this 4-year term of Council, and the process of renewing the strategic plan to guide the next term of Council will begin next spring with a community survey. The primary focus for the organization and the business plan and the top priority for City staff is the day-to-day provision of valued services for our community. Overall, 94% of staff time is dedicated to the ongoing operation and management of these services, including everything from cemeteries, engineering, and accounting, and many more. So resources are scarce for strategic actions, with only 6% capacity across the organization, and not all divisions have staff resources that they can dedicate for projects. At the beginning of this term of Council, staff consulted with Council to identify priorities for action, and as a result of that process, 25 new projects were added to the business plan, and to date, 65% of those have been completed, and another 25% are in progress. And it's expected that by the end of this year, 80% of the projects that were planned to be completed by the end of this year will be complete. So December marks the 3/4 point in this term of Council, and to date the organization has made good progress on all 5 strategic priorities on the plan, with more than 100 projects completed by the end of this year. The list is too long for me to mention all of those accomplishments, but some of the most significant actions are listed in this summary as well as in the staff report that you have in front of you. Since this is the final year of this term of Council, the focus of the 2018 Strategic Action Plan is to follow through on initiatives that have already been started. Approximately half of the actions on this plan are carryover items from the 2017 plan and projects that have already been started. 45 projects will be started in 2018, including 29 new actions that have been added to the plan. Those actions are primarily focused on following through on strategies and commitments that have been made previously in this term of Council, including Love My Hood, Make It Kitchener, asset management, customer service, as well as a number of service improvement initiatives. By the end of 2018, we expect to complete 144 strategic actions, with a number carrying over into the next term of Council. So on November 6th, City Council referred consideration of the creation of a CAT licensing program to the corporate business planning process. So after considering that request, bylaw enforcement came to the conclusion they don't have staffing resources to take on this initiative at this time. So you won't see that included in this business plan, the strategic action plan that's included in Appendix B. Should Council direct staff to proceed with the development of a CAT licensing program starting in 2018, it would put into jeopardy the other projects being led by that division, including the administrative penalties, monetary penalties system project, which could not proceed if staff were to do a CAT licensing project. So the Director of Bylaw Enforcement is here today if you have specific questions about that and want to explore the reasoning behind that. So So if there's any questions, I'm just going to move to my seat only because of my hearing disability. It's hard for me to hear when you ask me questions here. But your questions may be up for other people in the audience as well. So thank you very much.
Okay, very good. We do have a whole bunch, like 7 people in the queue, it looks like, at the moment. Again, this is the 144 separate items, so I expect many members of committee will use their full 10 minutes. I would just encourage you to try and keep your questions succinct so you can get as many of those answers in as possible. Okay, beginning with Councillor Etherington.
Through you, Mr. Chair, could I first off ask that we break out the CAT issue and that there be a separate vote on that issue, a recorded vote? Can I do that?
Certainly, if, yes.
And I have a couple of questions and comments on that particular issue, but we can deal with those as you go through.
Very good. Did you want to bring a motion forward with respect to that?
Yes, please.
An alternate motion? Okay, just in the interest of sort of saving some time around the horseshoe here, do you want to table that now?
Yes. I do not have it written, but I wanted to have that item separated out.
Okay, so would the intention be that and I think we're probably going to get a little more information on the AMPS project that was referred to. Would the intention be that, just so committee's understanding, that project be deferred, or that the CAT licensing come after that is completed?
I'm in a difficult position here. I believe the CAT issue is not going to go anywhere. I just wanted to break it out as part of the discussion, break it out and treat it separately.
Okay, if you want to think on it then and write it out, well, you're going to have plenty of time, I think, judging by the queue. Okay. And we'll come back to you, okay? Mayor Rabinovich.
Thank you very much, Chair Davey. I have a few questions and then actually a couple motions for consideration. One of which may get us part of the way where I think Councillor Etherington wants to go, but not the full way. So my question is this: if I understand the report correctly, AMPS right now is an initiative that we're doing collaboratively with the City of Waterloo. There's some cost sharing going on about it, and if we don't look at it now, we would have to come back to it at some point in the future and bear all the work and the costs associated with the work on our own.
Ms. McNeil?
Through Chair Davey, that is correct. We've got an opportunity with working in conjunction with the City of Waterloo right now to do some cost sharing, both on the research as well as on the hearing process.
Okay, and would we be we're in a world where we couldn't introduce a CAT bylaw this year and move forward with AMPS, would we be in a position to at least do research around control of the CAT population over the course of the year? To report back in 2019, could that be worked into the work plan and still move forward with the AMPS work?
Through the Chair, doing some general research in terms of what's out there and what other municipalities are doing and bringing that back to Council for further consideration and recommendation would be something that we could look at next year.
Okay, thank you. My other question and issue, and I think this one's probably for Mr. Reedman. Mr. Reedman, one of the things that we tackled this year has been probably the top issue that Council and Mayor deal with, and it's the issue of speeding in our residential streets. And we've moved some steps forward in terms of dealing with some speed mitigation matters, both with infrastructure and without infrastructure in our wards, and we also did 40 kilometer an hour in school zones. Are we seeing some benefit from all of that?
Mr. Reedman?
Through the chair, we have seen some benefit. I don't have the data with me today. There are sometimes challenges when we set a speed limit and the road is designed for a certain speed. We don't always get compliance, but I guess I'll leave it there for now and see if there's any other questions.
Okay, I guess where I'm going with it, and the question I wanted to ask was really just from a research point of view. Lately, we've been seeing more and more cities on residential streets, and I'm not talking now arterials and collectors and so on, but on residential streets, actually lowering the speed limit to 40 kilometers. I've seen it in Toronto, I've seen it in Ottawa, and so on. Is this something that we could potentially look at from a research point of view over the coming year to potentially have that information to then be able to consider it, the next council could consider it in the work plan next year if that information was available?
Through the chair, if we are looking purely from a research point of view, then yes, staff should be able to accommodate that request. If we're looking at implementation, then that would be a broader discussion.
Okay, Mr. Clerk, I have two motions I'd like to, or Mr. Chair rather, but I guess Mr. Clerk, two motions I'd like to bring forward. Do you want me to do that right now?
Please.
We'll start with the cat one, I guess. And the intention behind the cat one is, I understand where Councillor Etherington and others may want to come from in terms of dealing with how do we mitigate, how do we control the cat population. A number of us, including Councillor Etherington, participated in the tour at the Humane Society, and one of the questions I asked was, you've probably been hearing the debate that's been going on around licensing and so on. What, you know, if we were going to tackle something, what would your best advice be? And in fact, the response was, first and foremost, the first thing I would consider and look at is the whole issue of microchipping. And so I think none of us really know the answers and the best way to go about it. And so what I'm suggesting here is, let's be upfront. At least from my perspective, I'm not looking at this as a way of generating revenues. If that happens, fine. I think it's an issue of how do we control the cat population, particularly those that tend to run around the city, and licensing may not be the answer. And so what I'm asking here is that staff do research on a variety of options and best practices on best ways to control the cat population and increase the ability to return cats, including but not limited to licensing, microchipping, spay and neuter clinics. In fact, you know, some of these may be far better than licensing, I think, in terms of achieving the goal that we want, and that staff do that research over the coming year and bring a recommendation forward to council by early 2019.
Okay, so on this one, Councillor Etherington did indicate motion first, so I will go back to him later.
Yeah, go back to him, and then I guess this would be an amendment to it or an alternate motion?
Exactly. So yeah, Councillor Etherington, you can review it, and if you would like to defer to this motion or introduce your own, that's your prerogative, but you can think about it until I come back later. And your second motion, Mayor Rabinovich.
Just waiting for the clerk to throw it up on the screen. And the second one, and basically, I mean, the whereases are the stuff I talked about earlier, that staff be requested to study best practices in other Ontario and other municipalities to reduce speeds on residential streets, in particular to look at a 40-kilometer speed limit, and further that they bring this report back in early 2019 to have next steps considered as part of the 2019 work plan.
2019 work plan.
Sorry?
Sorry, can you repeat that last part? For the 2019 work?
2019 work plan, yes. Sorry? Yes. We're doing research in 2018, Councillor Gazzola, work in 2019.
Okay, let's leave this, I guess we can, leave this one up for now. So that concludes Mayor Rabinovich. We still have 5 people in queue. Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Just a couple questions. My first one is with regards to the Leisure Facilities Master Plan. Seeing that it's aim is for 2019. Is there any capacity to do it in 2018? And if not, what work could potentially be swapped with that, or what would be?
Okay, sorry, I did mean to indicate earlier if whenever everyone's asking a question about a specific item, if you could reference the page that you're on, just so we know.
I'm just on page 4-15.
4-15. Mr. May. 4-15.
Yeah, I don't know the exact number on the other.
Elsewhere as well, but 15, page 15.
The Leisure Facilities Master Plan.
Sorry, Mr. May.
So through you, Chair Davey, my understanding is that a considerable amount of work will be done in 2018, but it will take until probably the early part of 2019, and that will also align with the DC update.
Okay, and then my other question is with respect to on page 4-11 or 4-27 and 4-28 with regards to the business cases for the community centers. So I'm just trying to understand why the Mill Cortland Community Center expansion business case is planned before the Southwest End Community Center business case.
Through you, Mr. Chair, because one major component is because we anticipate it'll be a much smaller body of work. Before we get into a detailed business case on the Mill Cortland expansion, we actually have to go out to the community and reconfirm whether or not they want an expansion. And so that's the work that will be done.
My concern with the Southwest End, and the only reason I asked the question, I'm not trying to jump over Mill Cortland, but in the capital forecast, the Southwest comes before Mill Cortland. So my concern is that the business case for the Southwest is coming too late because the majority of the funding is in 2020. So how can we get that moved up to the 2018-2019 timeframe?
So through you, Mr. Chair, first of all, I am already concerned by the large number of projects being attempted to be completed in 2018 out of that area of the organization. There are already, as Councillor Galloway-Seelock is aware, discussions taking place in regards to that community center, and it's just a question of starting the formal business case. Frankly, we probably have months of work to do before we can even get to that point anyways.
So is there not still a benefit to having a business case, considering there's already discussions going on, but is there not a benefit to having that business case completed in 2019 as opposed to 2020?
So I don't have my capital budget in front of you, but my understanding is that this was aligned so that no construction will occur until the business case is complete.
So I can tell you, because I have, it's on my phone, that's why I'm using my phone, that funding for the South Community Center, the majority of it ends in 2020, and there's only a small portion in 2021, but it all starts in 2018, 2019, and 2020. So that's my concern, is that we should be looking at building in 2020 as opposed to just starting a business case and finishing a business case in 2020. Is this something we can look at and maybe look to adjust it to the 2019 timeframe?
So through you, Mr. Chair, I'd suggest if that's your desire, you should move a motion to that effect.
Okay. I will do that.
Okay. So I'm just thinking on that. I'm not sure committee is aware of all the implications, so I'm not sure how you're going to word the motion, but we'll leave it till we deal with that one. Councillor Fernandez.
Yes, thanks. So just more of a general question for Lori. I would expect that our strategic plan sets the stage for our business plan. Would that be correct?
Ms. Major?
The strategic plan provides the direction for the strategic action plan, which is what you're looking at today. 94% of the organization's capacity is committed to core service, which is connected to the strategies, but not quite as directly as the action plan. Core services are ongoing, as you know, and they have their own service levels and that sort of thing.
Right. And I guess that was one of the reasons why I was asking the question, because with 94% of our staff, of the work that our staff is doing is core services, I sometimes get concerned that as we add more new components and new asks to our business plan, and to our, that we get overwhelmed, and then our core services start to suffer because we don't know what the amount of work it's going to take our staff to take and to take them away from our core services. How do we balance that? Or does every department take a look at the core services and then the asks and say, I mean, I have a question, I have an ask as well, but I want to understand, I don't want to take away from our core services.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's an excellent question, and I appreciate your statement, because as I mentioned in the report, the delivery of quality, consistent core service to the community is the #1 priority of the organization, and is often the reason that projects on the business plan get deferred, because the core service delivery is #1. And so if compromising core service is the consequence of moving forward on a project, we don't move forward on the project. And that's just sort of an understanding in the organization. When we do the plan, we do it keeping in mind the demands and expectations of running our core services before we commit to projects. That's what the business planning process is for, is to help us reflect on that and manage that. There are times when there's an unexpected peak in core service demand, or issues or challenges we didn't see coming, or things end up being more complicated than we expected, and as a result, we are not able to move forward on projects. So you need to understand when you approve the strategic action plan today that there's no guarantees that all of that work will be done according to schedule. We usually do deliver the majority of things on schedule, but when we have to adjust things, we do strictly for that reason, to keep our core services.
And I think that's really important. And there are times when I think we should be setting a percentage at 95%, just because I think we have had situations, and the termite program is one that sort of came out of left field, and all of a sudden our building and our bylaw staff had to really scramble to get that program up and going. Before I run out of time, in fairness to a particular resident who's been asking me for almost a year about this particular request, and I know that Ms. McNeil will be very familiar with this, the question that has been asked of me is, when or would we ever be able to review the ability for our construction to be limited to no weekend work at all? And this is, like I said, this is a question, is not necessarily something that I would support as adding to a work plan or action plan, but would we be able to have an understanding of what kind of work that would involve to make that kind of change? I know that some cities do have limitations on heavy construction vehicle work on the weekends.
Ms. McNeil?
Through the chair, in all fairness, I'm not sure what the extent of work would be on that. It is an older bylaw that I think would benefit from having a complete relook at it. I think we would have to do a lot of work with the industry. We would be impacting them huge if we all of a sudden didn't allow work to occur on Sundays when we have for many, many years. So I think there would be quite a bit of public consultation that would be required there, as well as some research.
Okay. And, just quickly before my time runs out, do we get a lot of complaints on the weekend about heavy construction work? I know that there are times when houses are just being sort of completed because it's getting close to the closing date. What level of complaints do we see?
Through the chair, the number of complaints we receive are minimal. We do often receive questions as to whether it's permitted, but in terms of actual complaints about it, generally very minimal.
Okay, great. I'll queue in for my rest. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Marsh.
Thank you. I have a couple questions. First, just about Your Kitchener, Your Say initiative that usually follows the community survey every 4 years, will that still be taking place this year in 2018?
Through you, Mr. Chair. The decision's been made to go ahead with the community survey, so what has in the past been Environics, and gauge to what extent the priorities in the community have shifted from what they are currently. As you can see from the strategic action plan, we still have a lot of work to do, even to follow through on the priorities that were set at the beginning of the last term of council. And it's clear that these are important things to the community, but we do need to go out and test with them to see whether or not there's anything new or emerging issues or a new slant on those things. Once we get those results, we'll be able to determine how much consultation is required and what the focus of that consultation needs to be. So we're holding off planning the follow-up consultation to the community survey until after we receive those results so that we can customize it to what we learn from that process.
Okay, great. And so is that going to be a staff or Compass Kitchener decision, or is that coming to council?
Yeah, so when through you, Mr. Chair, when council receives the results, so the consultant that we hired to lead that survey will present the results to council. You will also receive a proposed community engagement plan for any follow-up work on those results, and you'll have an opportunity to provide input. Compass Kitchener is leading that process, of course, the community survey process, and are very much involved in the survey, and will be there at that time.
Okay, and but with the survey not being conducted till the spring, it's going to be tight timelines. So when do you anticipate we will hear about the results of the survey? Will it be within this term of council?
Oh, yes. Yes, no later than June 10th, I think, is the requirement in the in the terms of reference for the consultant. Yes, absolutely before the summer break.
Okay, thank you. With regard to page 447, just wondering about the citizens dashboard. I remember feeling excited about this initiative when we first heard it was going to be coming, and I'm just wondering if this is not something that we can I see that we've got looking for a potential later date, and wondering if staff can give us any more details about whether or not this is just something that we can't do in the next few years, or are we still hopeful that we can bring it online soon?
Okay, so who would speak to the Citizens Dashboard, page 4-47, right at the top of the sheet? Who's cue? Oh, Jana.
Through the chair, as the comment mentions, we do have some resource restraints right now. We haven't sort of scoped out exactly what we need to do, but we can look at reinstating it possibly next year. It's going to depend. We have some other resource constraints coming that we'll need to look at, so it may be next year, it could be the year after that.
Okay, and so then in a similar vein, closing the feedback loop that's going to be looked at in 2019. Sorry, I apologize, I don't have that page in front of me, but will that not potentially be hand in hand with the Citizens Dashboard?
I'm sorry,
closing the feedback loop.
Maybe that's on page 4-41 at the bottom of the page.
4- what?
Yeah.
41. 41, sorry. The acoustics, I don't know, they're declining.
You're talking about OG23, closing the loop with citizens?
Yes.
So that's a customer service related project, and that's about a project that will address how we strategize in order to get back to citizens through all of the various channels that they have to access us through in terms of ensuring that our service interactions are closed.
Yes.
We hadn't, to this point, talked about the Citizens Dashboard as being sort of hand in hand with that project. That's an interesting perspective.
Okay, so just
they are generally two separate
for future
projects.
consideration. Okay, thanks. And then I'm out of time, but I just want to ask that when we're considering the motion that the mayor put on the table about looking at CATs. If we could also call up I don't know if this is easy enough for you to do, to call up the motion that we looked at on November 6th, because it looks similar to me. At least in my mind, I didn't think any implementation was going to be taking place until 2019, but I would love to just confirm that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, if I can start quickly, could you just give me a quick explanation of the three things: strategic plan, strategic action plan, and business plan? Just quickly.
Okay, I'll try to be quick. The strategic plan is the vision for the city, the long-term future of the city, and the priorities for the current term of council. And it usually is focused on the kind of change we want to see, or improvements, or issues we'd like to address. Very specific to things that drive change in the organization.
Okay, if I could just interrupt. So it's just a generalized thing. There are no points to it. It just covers, generally speaking, right?
There are 26 strategies which give direction to how, but the priorities are fairly high level in general.
So there are 26 strategies that go with our, they're not here?
No, they're in the plan itself.
Okay. Yeah. All right, so that we're not dealing with those 26. Here, under this strategic action plan, are all of these projects here that you have listed on several schedules.
Sorry, the question, what are you asking me?
No, the strategic action plan are all the ones that are listed in this report?
Yes, the projects, the specific projects with timelines associated with them are the actions that we're taking to implement the broader priorities that are in the strategic plan.
And the business plan?
The business plan incorporates those action statements alongside our core services so that we have a holistic view of the work that's going on throughout the organization. And the strategic action plan only represents 6% of the staff time that it takes to deliver the business plan.
Okay, I find it somewhat complex and complicated. You basically are the only staff person who works on this. Is it a full-time job for you? I don't mean to. Is it? I'm trying to find out how many FTEs that are dedicated to just administering this program.
Okay, I am the manager of strategy and business planning, so it's my primary responsibility. It's not the only thing that I do, but it is primary part of my job. And we also have another full-time person who supports me in managing the processes around the business plan.
Okay, and you're still not online with this information. It's still something that comes out 4 times a year, right?
When you say online, do you mean like real-time updates?
Yes,
yeah, no, we're not doing
No,
that.
if I wanted to find out on a particular day how something's going, I can't. Yeah, okay, that's fine. Going to one of the schedules, I'm trying to get a grasp of where we're going, and you talked about 47 projects that we're carrying forward, and then another 45 new ones. So does that mean now we have 92 projects on the go? Is that what that means?
That's correct, across the organization.
Okay, and has it ever been contemplated assigning person hours to each one of those tasks? Because you make a very good point where it's 95% of our time is our day-to-day stuff. So you've only got 6% of our time. I'm just wondering how many person hours for those 90 would be involved for those 92 projects. Is that possible?
We can do a rough estimate. We don't do a detailed accounting, but we can do an estimate based on the 6%.
Yeah, I would be interested to see if you can and how easily that can be done. Now, the next question I have, of those 92 projects, is there a prioritization? how can I read a prioritization into those? Because if we want to fill in the cat business, where does it fit?
So the corporate leadership team recommends the priorities. There are other things, of course, that we could do that are not priorities, so you're not seeing those on the recommended plan. You're only seeing the things that are considered priorities for 2018.
But there are 92 of them. They can't all be of equal priority. Of those 92, which are the most important? I mean, to make a decision, if we're going to slip other ones in or out, we need to know where do they all stand, and where do the ones we want to slip in, where do they go? So that's not available at this point? And so it's okay if it isn't.
The only way you could trade off one project for another is looking at the priorities within the division in which the work is being done, because you can't substitute resources in, let's say, the facilities management division for resources in the bylaw enforcement division.
Okay, so
you have to manage the capacity within the division.
Yeah, so we have to really take those 92 priorities that we have and divide them into divisions, and then within those divisions, there needs to be some kind of a prioritization. That we don't do that, do we? We just throw out all 92 out there.
We do divide them by divisions when we're doing the planning process. We give it to you, organized by strategic priorities, so you can see what we're intending to accomplish through the work.
You're doing your job, but we don't have a prioritization. We have really 92 things on the plate, all of which are important.
Okay, Councillor Zola, your time's expired, but maybe we can get some more clarification from staff on this. But the way I took it is that by staff bringing forward this body of work, they're saying they can accomplish, they don't need to prioritize them, they can accomplish all 92 of these within the timeframes that are here. So that doesn't necessarily need to be a prioritization, because the expectation is they will all be completed by their timeline. So I would look to staff.
Okay, if that's understood.
Exactly, everything's number one priority, essentially. Yeah. And you can queue back in, Councillor Zola, if you have more questions. Councillor Singh.
Yes, trying to do paperless this time around, and it's not as convenient as I thought it would be. So bear with me. My first question would be on page 4-39 for CS 41. And I'll just go off my notes here. It's for development charges. This was a point I had raised as part of the budget process during capital when we looked at the DCs, and asking that when we are conducting our next review, could we have a greater allocation for funding, non-engineering funding, to already built-up neighborhoods when development happens overall in the city, and reinforcing our existing trails, neighborhoods, parks, and such. In giving direction to staff, is this an appropriate time in saying that that be considered and looked at, or would that be a body of work that would already be done?
Mr. Chapman.
Through the chair, that work will automatically be done as a part of the study. I think based on your comments, the point we'll take away is to make sure that when we're engaging council on the issue, we elevate that point and ensure that we engage council in the conversation around it. But as I mentioned, the calculation format is fairly prescribed. And so when we come back, we'll make sure that we speak to the issue and address it with council.
Well, I would appreciate it as such. So the next point is on 4-35, CS63. This is for regarding, I think, street lights of Internet of Things, or smart street light or LED street lights. As part of this program, as we're completing our conversion, and we're looking out there in private partnership with what can be done with the aspect of Internet of Things in improving city services. As a review, are we looking at data collection as well, and with this data collection and partnering with with outside groups and seeing how that data can be mined for, again, community benefit, or for revenue purposes as well. And if that's not the case, does direction need to be given for staff to consider that?
In terms of data collection, the LED streetlights, no one's queuing in, so I'm just trying to help, but they won't be, once implementation is in, there won't be any sensors collecting any information until we have a business case go through and install sensors for whatever it is it might be. But if it sounds like you're referring more to our open data, Mr. Chapman?
Through the chair, that's the point I was going to make, is that yes, Councillor Singh, I think there is an appreciation that as we install sensors, we'll be gathering data, the use for which we may not even have a vision at that point, and so that will lead to conversations around whether or not to release it as open data to encourage others to come up with solutions, or whether there's commercial potential and something that could be sold. That said, currently our direction is towards open data, but the bottom line is, yes, this is very much on our minds and will be the topic of future conversation as we install sensors and start to gather data.
Well, that's why I ask as such, because, sorry, I didn't have this in front of me before. I was just going off my notes, but now finally found the page online. So as it says, work with vendors to design the network, provision network connections, points, and to provision network security. And also as LED lights are deployed and narrowband network begins to take shape, IT will optimize the network and develop solid understanding of potential use. My focus is on the potential use. And again, I realize we don't have an understanding of what data collection can be, and depending on the sensor sets that we will have, but I would want us to approach it that way. So I'm not sure if staff would do it anyways, or again, additional guidance is required.
No, we agree, and we share the same vision.
Okay, perfect. The next thing is page 4-30, SE10, community-wide tree planting and donation program. And I have a question after that, and another one that's similar design. My focus is on the donation program. I'm glad we're looking at that and improving, I guess, engagement with the residents and lifting some of the red tape. I think that's what we had heard early on, that was maybe a barrier in the past. Through the donation program, will there be an opportunity for recognition, plaque, and incentivizing? The only reason I ask is, again, residents sometimes feel that they do already enough with the taxes that they pay. This may encourage more participation with this program. Are we looking at that already?
Ms. Fletcher?
Through the chair, the donation tree planting program will come forward as part of the Sustainable Urban Forest program, and so I can take forward your questions.
The question was, as part of the donation program that we are considering of implementation, will recognition of who's donating that particular tree, allowing for plaque, will that be considered as part of the program?
It will be considered, and we will bring details forward as part of the program.
Right. Staff are just in sync with what I would want, so I don't have to recommend any changes. The next one is
Councillor Singh, could I get you to key back in?
I only have one more, and then I'm done. I don't have to key back in. Yeah. The next one is for related to donation program. This is for neighborhood placemaking, public seating. Same thing. If people are donating for seats, would be allowed for plaques on the benches as such.
Mr. May.
Through you, Mr. Chair. To be honest, this program doesn't have a big donation component, but certainly if people were interested in donating, we would look for the appropriate way to acknowledge that contribution.
The only reason I ask is people look for ways to, I guess, contribute so that in memory of someone, if we had a recognition program through a plaque, I'm positive there would be far more uptake. So I would hope that program will consider that as a mechanism. So thank you.
Okay, everyone in the queue has spoken before. I've actually had, in casual conversations, had most of my questions answered. The only one I do have, and I'm not sure if Mr. Murray isn't here, but on page 4-21, the broadband and fiber optic infrastructure, I like what I see here. I understand that we're in the process. My question is, I don't see any mention of wireless, more specifically 5G technology. Do we know if that is, if 5G technology is included in the advocacy for this item? Mr. Chapman?
Mr. Chair, I don't know the answer to that question, so I'll ask Mr. Murray to follow up with an email.
Okay, so actually that's fine. I just want to then pass along that, again, 5G is the next generation of wireless cell phone type technology, and my concern is the telcos are going to go after the lowest hanging fruit, being the large urban centers, Toronto, Vancouver, et cetera. So anything we can do to make sure that we're an early adopter, or as an early adopter as possible, I think it should be included in that. Okay, second round of questioning, Councillor Fernandez.
Okay, I have a whole bunch, so I'm going to try and I'm going to ask them quick, and hopefully the answers will be quick. So on 4-20 and 21, the customer service review and closing the loop on the citizens, a little bit similar to what Councillor Marsh was talking about, and wondering where Pink Street is in all of this. I really thought we were there, but it sounds like we're still not there. How and when will we be?
Yeah, Ms. Miller?
Through the chair, I'm not sure if you have a specific question about Pink Street itself.
Well, the whole concept of closing the loop with citizens and the customer service, this customer service review. I thought we'd been doing the review, and I thought we were there, and that we were starting now on the end portion, and that is closing the loop. And why aren't we there
So
yet?
through the chair, we have not done the customer service review yet. It is actually starting in probably late January or early February. There'll be a significant staff engagement component, followed by a significant external engagement component with citizens. This is really to understand sort of the landscape of services now and what people's service experience with us is, so that we can determine where to improve things, what the challenges are, what the opportunities are, those kinds of things. Close the loop with citizens builds on that. It's really, as you know, we have a number of customer service channels that citizens are accessing us through: telephone, in-person, social media, corporate contact center. It's really to take a look at all of those channels and how or if we can close the loop better so that citizens understand when an interaction has been completed. A lot of the online work will happen naturally as we integrate CRM and build out the online portal, but there's work to look at some of the other channels and how we make the experience for citizens consistent across the board.
Okay, thank you. On page 4-25, complete streets policy. I guess we've been talking about complete streets for quite a while. Is there a change that's happening here? And I know that we have a policy for where we're putting sidewalks, but based on the amount of backlash we've been getting from citizens on sidewalks in some areas, is that being included in this complete street policy?
Through the chair, so the complete streets policy is meant to link together everything. So things like even placement of seating in a road right of way all factor to complete streets. Construction activities and providing a sidewalk for people where sometimes we don't. So it's really setting an overarching strategy for everything and linking those existing policies together. So the intent is not to bring back individual policies that council has approved, but this is meant to link together all of those things into one overall guidance document.
Okay. 4-26, the Lower Dune land use review. It's talking about here that that the master plan would be implemented by way of amendments to the official plan and zoning bylaw. The actual geography of the study area still needs to be determined. I'm a little bit worried that we're talking about approving something in the official plan and zoning bylaw before we've done the actual land use review. And should that not be tied right in with the one below that, the Homer Watson Conestoga College City Node Master Plan?
Mr. May?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the first one is to basically look at the entire planning framework for that area. So I think that will do exactly what you're describing, but it'll go beyond that to try to deal with some of the behavioral issues in the area.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part, Mr. Mayor.
It'll go beyond just land use planning to deal with some of the behavioral issues in the area.
Okay, is there any opportunity for us to move that up a wee bit? I mean, we're looking at 2018, 2019, right? Are we going to start something in 2018?
Yes, it's identified to start in 2018 and be completed in 2019.
Spring, summer?
I can't speak to the specifics. The long-range planning team has a very long list of high-profile projects, but certainly I can follow up and get you an email.
Okay, thank you. On page 4-31, the year-round maintenance of trails and pathways, have we had an update yet from last year's work? And if so, when can we get, if not, when can we?
Ms. Fletcher?
Through the chair, council has not had an update, and I will follow up with staff on their timing and update council through an email.
Okay. 4-33, development of detailed asset management plans, development of facility asset management plans. There's, just in reviewing the details and description, it seems a bit of overlap, and we've seen in the new section, recommended changes, that asset management plans for a number of areas throughout the city, cemeteries, golf, and a couple of others. Is this a change in action, or is it a moving up of action?
Mr. Reedman?
Through the chair, it isn't a change in action, it's a change in the way we report. So we are reporting on the 4 areas we are doing detailed asset management plans for this year. So that's a new item that you're seeing in the work plan, but it is work that was planned. So it's instead of just having that overarching line item, which is SE 18, we're showing which ones are the work plan for next year as well.
Okay, and my last question on 4-41. E-services strategy, engagement, and refreshed roadmap. And when I look at advanced CRM technology, it uses the same wording, roadmap, work plan. First of all, can I understand what this e-services strategy, engagement, refreshed roadmap is, and how is that tied into the advanced CRM technology?
Ms. Miller.
Through the chair, the e-services refreshment roadmap is, council will recall, I believe it was in 2014, you approved the e-services strategy, and there was a roadmap attached to it at that time, which was essentially an implementation plan and talked about the kinds of e-services that we were looking at implementing in the future, and that plan needs to be refreshed. And so one of the things we want to do, it's actually tied to the customer service review, is to talk to citizens about what it is that they want to be able to do online that they can't maybe currently do, or that they can do but is maybe not, the best user experience currently. So we want to use the engagement that we'll be doing through the service review to talk to citizens about that and create a new plan to move forward with introducing what citizens want in regards to e-services.
Okay, thank you. I just, a quick comment, Mr. Chair, that there's a number of things here that as I was looking through, I just feel like we're no disrespect, but we're spinning our wheels, or we don't seem to be moving forward on a couple of these things, and I don't know if it's just my perception, especially around the customer service, around the closing of the loop, around the CRM. Now the e-strategy, we're already doing a review, and I feel like we haven't even had an update on what's been happening with that. So those are just my comments and maybe just my perception.
Thank you. Councillor Gazzola?
Yeah, just a couple more questions quickly. Going over this, and I'm trying to totally understand this. Appendix B has 120 action plans, not the 92 I was talking about. Is that right? So we have 190, or we have 120 on the go. Is that right?
A number, through you, Mr. Chair, a number of those action items are ongoing programs and not projects with specific start dates and end dates, so that accounts for the difference between the 92 and the 120. Okay,
then Appendix C gives 29 new. Are those 29 included in the 120?
Yes, they are.
And then the 6 to be removed are in the 120?
No, they have been taken off.
Okay, yeah. It's a theoretical question. What happens now? 2018 is an election year, and all of a sudden you could have a whole new bunch of faces around here. Where do we stand at that point?
So this 2018 is an election year, but the election doesn't happen until near the end of the year. So this plan will get us through 2018. Many of these projects may take longer than that to complete, but I think it's our expectation we will finish what we start, even if it goes into 2019. But we were very deliberate in not adding a whole lot of new strategic directions and ambitious new projects, because we will do a new strategic plan that the new council, whether there's returning phases or new phases, will need to approve, and that will set the direction for the next 4 years.
Okay, thank you. I have a question on the AMPS program. I noticed that we're working with Waterloo. I'm just curious as to why Cambridge isn't working with us also, or with the three. It's really something that affects the 3 cities. Have we approached them, or?
Through the chair, we did approach Cambridge and they chose to opt out.
Is this something that will affect every community in the province?
Through the chair, it is our understanding and what the direction we've been given from the courts that at some point everybody will have to go through this process. So Cambridge may have to do it on their own at some point.
And just one final point on this, has AMO looked at this situation, and are they offering any guidance?
Through the chair, I'm not sure what AMO's position is on this. I do know that several municipalities have already moved to AMPS in the hopes of doing what we're doing, just getting ahead of being directed out by the courts.
Okay, thank you. My final question is, and I have a situation in the ward that I represent that just arisen recently, and council and staff are aware about it. It's the question of the pedestrian crossing of the LRT for the people around Traynor getting to Fairview. My question is that project in the 94% or is it in the 6%? So if it's in the 6%, it's not on the list. I'm hoping it's in the 94%. Who can answer that?
Mr. Reedman can answer that.
Through the chair, so it is a specific project, so it is in the 6% of work plan, so we're accommodating that work right now, but it isn't a core service, it's a specific project that we're addressing.
Is it one of the items in the list?
Through the chair, it's not listed in the work plan right now. As you know, the work is underway for the study, so then the next phase would be bringing back a report to council to either seek approval on the project, and it's subject to council approval, and then we would slot it into the budget process in a future year.
So, okay, so do we have a lot of these that come up? 6% doesn't give us much time to do very much. So if that comes back, where does it fit within the 6%?
Through the chair, so we have to work with the region on who would be the constructor of that project. So it may be the region that's the constructor of the project since it crosses the LRT, and it may be a funding allocation from each municipality. Those are the details we're working out right now. But if the city was leading the project, we would likely tender out the work to a contractor, and it would be managed within our work plan.
That's fine, thank you. I just want to make sure that somehow it gets on the list somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you. And last we have Councillor Marsh.
I just want to know if we, I'm in favor of this motion that's in front of us regarding looking at reducing speed limits in residential areas. And since school zones are already only 40 kilometers an hour instead of lower, if we can just add an amendment that staff consider lowering the speed limit in school zones should we decide to lower the residential streets across the city to the same level.
Okay. Staff explore that as well. We'll include that. Councillor Zola in the queue again?
Another question, I'm not sure if it's of staff.
Go ahead.
my question is, we have 2 or 3 additional items coming forward. If they're going to go on the list, what comes off the list? Do we know that? Or are we going to? Are staff going to say that 6% is going to stretch into 8%? Or?
That's a question of staff. I believe depending what happens with the CAT licensing item, if we go ahead and approve, go ahead with the CAT licensing now, then we were told that AMPS would be coming off of the list. My understanding is if we don't, then nothing will change there. I think staff would have to comment with respect to the item before us, and I believe, as well as Councillor Galloway-Seelock's staff hasn't commented how it would impact the plan in place. So that would be staff to respond. Do you want to get a response on each of those, Councillor Gazzola? May as well. So we'll start with Mr. May. Do you have an idea yet, or would this be a follow-up question on Councillor Galloway-Seelock's, how it might impact the work plan?
So I'll maybe just go through the list for CSD. So you're absolutely right. If the original motion on CAT licensing is to build out the full licensing program, we would have to put AMPS aside and notify the City of Waterloo that we won't be participating with them. If it is what the mayor has put in terms of what I think is a much smaller scope, it's simply research, we could do that as part of our core service, and AMPS could continue as well. In terms of Councillor Galloway-Seelock's question, I don't have I could support starting the business plan for the Southwest End in 2018, understanding that it wouldn't get complete in 2018, but could be completed in 2019.
Okay, that's helpful. And Mr. Reedman on the traffic item?
Through the chair, similar to Mr. May's comment, if this is purely a research component at this point in time, staff could accommodate it within our core service for next year. If it's beyond that, then we would have to look at either revising our work plan.
Okay, I think that was helpful. I have 2 more in the queue now. Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Oh, I was just bringing forward my motion.
Oh, actually, yeah, if you wouldn't mind now, that would be great. It's just so we can take a look at it before we get into it.
So it's pretty much what Mr. May said, that we're going to asking to move the business case to 2018 and completion in 2019. And then because I had the capital budget information, I thought I would just include it for people's purposes, so you can see the point that I'm making is that the majority of the funding for the program comes in 2020, and I believe we should have the business case before then. And so I would appreciate the support to move that up.
Very good. And Mayor Vrbenovich? Oh, I had you queued.
No, I think I was queued in earlier, just in response to Councillor Gazzola's question, but it's been answered, obviously. So.
Okay, very good. So we will go to Councillor Etherington then on your preference. You have. Go ahead.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Recognizing the fact that I believe a majority of councillors, the mayor and staff, are not comfortable with quickly implementing CAT licensing. I'd have to be blind not to recognize that. I merely wanted to see the whole issue debated today. The mayor's motion is kind of a consolation prize, but it will at least achieve that discussion. And I'm prepared to support that motion as long as it includes, and I believe it does, I'd need to see it again, as long as it includes the possibility of licensing cats at some point. So having said that, I have nothing to add to the mayor's motion, except to thank him for putting it together. And I have a couple of questions of staff on the subject, and some comments on the subject. So I don't know when you want to hear those, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I would take those now.
Okay, the questions I think would either be to Mr. May or to Gloria. And by the way, I wanted to couch the questions to Gloria. It has been my experience that she's one of the hardest working staff people at the city. So I don't want her to take any umbrage by this, but the first question had to do, when we were considering the whole issue of CAT licensing and the potential revenue, when we looked into this, the result was it increased to $630,000 a year from the city to the Humane Society. Did we ever stop and look at the potential for revenue from cat licensing? That's my first question.
Ms. McNeil?
Through the chair, during this contract negotiation, we didn't. I believe the conversation had come up previously and there was not any support for it. Therefore, that was not something that we discussed.
Okay. And considering the mayor's motion, to me, in part, it kind of flies in the face of the reasoning that I'm seeing for not going ahead with it now has to do with workload, suggestions that it would take at least 2 years to put cat licensing together. Are you confident you have the time and the staff to do what is in the motion which is before us today?
Through the chair, the difference that I see between the motion that was brought forward previously and the mayor's motion is that the mayor's motion is simply best practices and some general research as to what other municipalities are doing and to bring that back. I believe the previous motion included public consultation and some more in-depth work to be brought back to council, and along with the recommended licensing fee, which I think is a bit more involved than what the mayor's put forward. So I do believe that we can do this general research within the next year through our core services.
Thank you very much. And I had a comment, Mr. Chair. Can I make that now?
Please.
I'll try to make it fast. I originally presented council with a motion to license cats for 2 basic reasons. At the time, we had doubled the amount of taxpayer cash going to the society, as I said, to $630,000. This is also no reflection on the Humane Society because they do an excellent job. So the first involved money, which seemed to be a lot of money, $2.4 to about $1 million over the next 4 years. But the second reason had to do with basic fairness, where we expect dog owners to pay for licenses, $30, I believe, for an annual license, but cat owners to pay nothing, despite the fact that my understanding is about 60% of work done by the Humane Society is with cats, not dogs. If I was a dog owner paying a license as well as city taxes, I think I'd be pretty annoyed at that fact. Now, considering I've been challenged on mathematics, I'm not strong on mathematics, but considering the fact that we have an estimated 60,000 cats at any time in Kitchener, I think that is low. I think it'll increase in coming years. We could, like dogs, have a third of that total willing to pay voluntary licenses. So you got 20,000 people paying, let's say, $25 a cat. You can do your own math on that, but that's at least $500,000 a year to offset those $630,000 cost per year to the Humane Society. By the way, the issue of upsetting cat owners, as I said, if I was a dog owner voting in the coming election, I'd be pretty upset at having to pay that $30 while cat owners did not. Now, I don't want to get into any detail on this because obviously we'll be looking at it, but I did read recently about Guelph has a voluntary cat license program, and as of January they're going to make it mandatory. They're hiring a company out of Kingston that tries to document people that have pets and suggest to them they should be paying licenses. I believe the deal with Guelph is that if their income from licensing goes up, the company gets paid. If it does not, the company does not get paid. So there are various ways around this in other cities, which I presume we'll be looking at. Now, I understand, believe me, I understand the reluctance of councillors to investigate or introduce cat licensing in an election year, but please don't try to dismiss it as the mayor has done by saying it's a cash grab. You could say, if you made that argument, the same for the administrative monetary penalty system, which is immediately after this on page 4.5, 4.6, which has the potential to get the city additional revenue from fines, and I support that. Is that a cash grab? We're doing that as part of our corporate business plan. So please, if you would, I'm asking council to give serious consideration to the opportunity to implement cat licenses at some point and raise the kind of money that could be used, including the Humane Society, but we'd have more money, in my opinion, to, for example, improve everything from the tree canopy in the city to trails to a method, and I've mentioned this before, a method that might help seniors stay in their homes and cope with increasing utility and tax costs. I would ask for a recorded vote, Mr. Chair, and as I said, I support the mayor's motion.
Okay, thank you. So we are a fair bit behind, about an hour behind actually at this point. I have Councillors Gazzola and Fernandez in the queue. Is it on? I want to take the vote on the cat license issue now. Are you want to reference the cat item alone? Cat? No? Cat? Okay, well, I'll come to you after that then. Mayor Verbenovich on the cat issue.
Thank you, Chair Davey. Just very briefly on the cat. And again, I appreciate where Councillor Etherington is coming. I think we were all surprised by the change in fees that we've had to deal with, and rightly so, with respect to the Humane Society. And I understand what he's trying to get at. I don't necessarily agree with all of the arguments. I mean, you know, right now we're only getting licensing from 30% of the dogs, so to suggest that we're going to hopefully get 50% of the cats, I think is very hopeful, because the ability to detect cats, quite frankly, is nowhere near as easy as it is dogs, because when you come knock on the door, if you go that step, you're not going to get a barking cat coming to your, you might get a meowing cat, and if you can hear it, and in all likelihood, you're not going to know what's, that there's cats in the house. For me, this is really about the ability to return cats to their owners, find them if that's appropriate, if they're running loose, and having a better control of the cat population. And so that's why, in my mind, pieces like microchipping and spay and neutering are a big part of this. Will licensing be part of it? Maybe that is a best practice, maybe not, but at least this will give us the opportunity to do all the homework going forward, and then we can decide in the future.
Okay, so that concludes. A recorded vote has been called as moved by Mayor Verbenovich, and we'll vote on that rate meow. I had to do one. Just the cats. I was going to say, if you're a general comment, I was going to say it before we vote on the main recommendation. Okay, so we just hold off on that vote for 1 second. Councillor Gazzola, you can make your comment now.
Yeah, I'd like to make my whole thing and get it over with, okay? All right. No, I think on this whole issue, I think staff have done a lot of work, and there's been a tremendous improvement over the number of years and the work that they've done. And I think they've, even though I have had some trouble understanding, I think it's well laid out, okay? And so with that, I will totally support what staff has brought before us. I will not support any of these additional items that are being brought forward, because I do not see them as of an urgent nature, that we need to deal with those and shove out other stuff that is important to us. On a couple of them, staff, in their kindness, are saying, yeah, we'll try to work it out when we do our core services. To me, our core services are our main priority. We have to look after our customers. And if we start throwing in extra things for staff to do, they'll probably work on it, but I'm afraid it makes it that they have to drop other things. So our core services are essential, and I think that's where we need to concentrate on them. Again, these projects that are being thrown forward here really go on into 2019, and it could be a whole new world around this horseshoe for 2019. So I'm totally in support of what's before us, and to emphasize that nothing that these additional items that have been brought forward to us are of such urgent nature that they have to set on the back burner some of the other projects that have already been there for a number of years. And really, our core projects, our core work is the stuff that we have to do. I look at the other 6% as nice to have, but do we really need to do them? They're nice to have. They're tremendous things to improve service to our customers, but it's the 94% we have to look after.
Point of clarification, Mayor Verbenovich.
Apologies, Mr. Chair, but I think it needs to be corrected. Nobody said that anything is being put on the back burner by considering these. Staff have indicated that they can fit within the current workload, and it's based on that response that these motions are being brought forward. Again, I want to be absolutely clear. Nothing that is already on the work plan is being put on the back burner. Those were the responses from staff.
Okay, and Councillor Galloway-Seelock, same.
Just in response to that, I agree. There's not anything that's being shoved to the back burner, but I agree. Core services are important, but also servicing the areas that are unserviced is also a priority for our community. If I just remind you that there are 2 of every 10 kids come from Ward 5, and we don't have a permanent community center. So there's definitely importance there. And it's also important when you have the funding for 2020 to have a business case done beforehand. Because if at the end of the day there's no business case, then there's no community center. And so I think it's important to put that in place to make sure that that happens. And so I do strongly believe in core services, but I also believe in supporting areas that are underserviced.
Okay. Councillor Fernandez, on the main motion, do you want to speak now, and then we can get to the voting?
I apologize. When I asked the question, I wondered if I was supposed to, when I asked about the construction bylaw question in terms of reducing the ability for construction to happen on weekends, should that have been a motion? Or I just want an answer from staff about the kind of time it would take. So if that needs to be a motion, I have written something out, but I just really want to make sure that I'm not...
I think just for clarity, I think we should, I think we should take that as a motion.
So it's really just a question asking staff to give me an understanding so I can honestly respond to these residents, the kind of time it would take for us to do a review around the construction industry's ability to not work on the weekends. So that's really all I'm asking for. I don't want to change anything or add anything to the business plan. I also would like to know if we're planning on voting on the CAT issue, the traffic issue, and the business case for the Southwest Community Center, all independently.
Yeah, we'll be voting. Yes, we'll be voting on all 4 items independently, and then finally, actually, I don't have a mover yet for the main motion.
I'll move it.
Moved by Councillor Fernandez, and then we'll vote on the main motion after that. Okay, so we've dealt with the CAT issue, so we can vote on that one now, and that's been a recorded vote. Those in favor? And opposed? That motion carries. We will now vote on the speed limit research there. And I feel the need to comment that I will support this. I'm in support of the notion of exploring it, but I will need to see some concrete evidence that it will affect drivers' behavior and it will significantly add to safety, because I wouldn't want to go through this process otherwise. So as moved by Mayor Verbenovich, those in favor? Recorded vote. Those in favor? And opposed? That motion carries. We'll now deal with Councillor Galloway-Seelock's motion in the community center. We don't need to have a recorded vote on that. Those in favor? Those in favor? Has a recorded vote been asked for everyone? Okay. Sure. All right. Why not? Voting is open. Those in favor? And opposed? That motion carries. And we actually haven't seen Councillor Fernandez's motion yet. Okay, so the motion is essentially asking staff for how much time it would take to research the bylaws around construction. Okay. I'll comment briefly. I will support staff coming back with the time, but I will be clear that I have absolutely no intention of supporting staff actually doing this research. I think it's, but okay. Recorded vote. Oh, sorry. Actually, I have Councillor Schneider on this. Okay, sorry, I missed this in the queue. Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just concerned about how this might affect the completion of schools and things like that. Like if a school needs to be completed by September, if they can't do construction on the weekend, I think there's a lot of things to consider here still.
Yeah, and I think, I'm not sure staff's going to have the answer to those questions. Like I said, there's no way I can see myself supporting this, but the only question before us is the request of how much time it would take. So I don't really want to get into the implications of this a whole lot just yet. I mean, if staff has a quick answer to that question, I would take it, but I don't see anyone queuing in. Ms. McNeil?
Through the chair, I know City of Waterloo just recently went through and repealed and replaced their noise bylaw, and they actually went through the process of hiring a consultant, and it took them in excess of 12 months to do that. So I would guess that it would probably be the same amount of time for us.
Oh, actually, that's helpful. I wasn't sure you had that at your fingertips. Councillor Fernandez, does that respond to your... Okay, so we don't need to take this motion then?
We can just take it off.
Take it off, very good. Okay, and we'll now vote on the main motion as moved by Councillor Fernandez. And I would like to thank staff for the work on this. I know it's a big body of work. Recorded vote, yes. Those in favor? And opposed? Okay, that carries. So if I'm just trying to get a sense now, because we're at about 10 after 1, and this item, we're in for 45 minutes before asking staff. Can I ask committee, do we have significant questions? Do we think we can get this done in half an hour, or should we look to staff to see if we can defer it? Preferences? Lunch has been here since noon. Well, okay. This committee was supposed to go till 1, but okay. Okay, so can we take this immediately after lunch? So looking to staff. Ms. Flack, yes? Yeah? Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I'm concerned. We have 3 delegations coming for 2 o'clock for community services.
Okay, hands raised. Who has questions on this item? I thought it was fairly self-explanatory. Questions. Okay. Please. I'm not sure if licensing they may have after-work commitments and that sort of thing. That's okay? No, it does not work? Okay, it does not work. So I think, I'm just going to say, we took too long, we're going to have dinner late. My preference, I'll take a vote on it if you like, but I think we should just deal with it now, try and get it done in 20 minutes, and then get back on target. And if anyone has an argument with that, then we can take a vote on it. Councillor Marsh?
Councillor Davey, I don't want to argue with you at all, but I definitely think we're going to make better decisions if we take a short break to eat and have what I would suggest we do if we feel the need to get on this today, right away, then which I would like to do as well. I suggest that we attempt to sit and do this right after lunch, but before 2 o'clock. Rather than try to plow through now.
Timing for caucus? Mayor Benich or someone can, Mr. Chapman, timing for caucus?
I'm available. I don't know about the other staff, but I can be available for caucus later. I don't know.
Mr. Chapman?
Through the chair, we'll check with staff. I'm certainly familiar with the content of the caucus report and can speak to it generally. If staff can't be here, I can also get any technical questions from you and attempt to respond to those later on as well. So I'll confirm that staff can be here, and if not, I'll let you know, Mr. Chair. But certainly I can speak to the caucus report in general this afternoon.
Okay, sorry, but timing for the caucus report, how long do you think it will take?
It depends on I think it's a fairly straightforward issue. It depends on whether or not council wants to debate the options.
Okay. So can we try to reconvene for, say, 1:40 to maybe then do that? Does that work for everyone? Okay, reconvene for 1:40 and then we'll deal with licensing as soon as you come back, okay?
I'll take the motion, though, to go in camera and get that over with. Moved by Councillor Fernandez, second by Councillor Galloway-Seelock. All those in favor, opposed, that's carried. Move the QP 791 settlement. Councillor Ioannidis, Councillor Schneider. All those in favor, opposed, that's carried. Bylaws for 3 readings. Councillor Marsh, Councillor Yanetsky. All those in favor, opposed, that's carried. Motion to adjourn.
Okay, working right through this. Ms. Flactu, you have a presentation for us.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Davey and members of Finance and Corporate Services. I'm here today to talk about the proposed comprehensive business licensing bylaw. So I'm going to go through a little bit of background first. So the licensing comes from the Municipal Act. They grant permission to municipalities to license businesses in order to protect public interests for 3 main things: health and safety, consumer protection, and nuisance control. And throughout the review of the bylaws, we did lots of public consultations. So we engaged business owners. We met with specific external stakeholders such as the KW Humane Society, some contractors, food trucks, and some temporary vendors, as well as we met with a lot of the internal stakeholders, and they consulted on the creation of the bylaws such as legal, planning, economic development, fire, and building. And we consistently heard the same type of feedback, which is there's too many bylaws and they're difficult to navigate their way through, that the application process can be onerous for business owners, and that some of the fees were too high for certain types of classes of license. So with the public consultation information in mind, as well as the guiding principles, which I'll outline in the next slide, we took those to review the chapters, and we looked at best practices, looked at some of the emerging trends, what we've heard from our daily interaction with businesses, and our goal was to create a clear, concise, and modern bylaw that reflected what the comments from other businesses were. So in each of the chapters, we applied these guiding principles when we looked at making any potential changes to it. So looked at eliminating duplication, meaning if they were already being governed by another level of government, or if they had an act that already legislated them. We looked at whether we needed to also have a municipal license or the same amount of regulations around it. And we also looked at them in terms of risk. So we used a risk analysis to determine if they were a low risk or a high risk business. So a low risk business would be like a clothing retailer, or a high risk would be something like a tattoo parlor. And then we looked at the fees that we had, and we looked at the average time spent by staff for administration, inspection, and enforcement for each type of license to create fair fees. And we also wanted to support business development. So as we mentioned before, we looked at some of the current trends and what we're hearing, the types of businesses looking to open in Kitchener. And we created categories that previously may not have fit perfectly into one of the categories we had. And then lastly, based on a lot of the feedback that we had, we looked at how we can streamline the processes and go digital with the application process. So some of the major changes that you'll see in the licensing bylaw, which are more thoroughly outlined in the report, is a consolidation and elimination of certain chapters. So as a guiding principle, we heard through public consultation that many businesses required multiple licenses in order to open, and that was difficult for them. So we looked at if we could combine any of those. So for example, there were 4 different types of licenses that dealt with stationary food, so we consolidated those into one food shop schedule. And then we looked at eliminating some of the chapters if they were heavily regulated by another body of government or act, or if they were very low risk. And then we also created some new categories in order to protect public interest, as well to make clear regulations for some of the businesses that didn't fit into another category, like pop-up shops or pop-up farmers markets. And then we looked at refreshing our processes, so expanding some of the existing technology on Amanda to bring online applications through public portal, as well as changing our internal process from currently requiring the business license to go to several different city divisions to get inspections, and now we're moving towards a one-stop shop model where they come directly to licensing, and licensing takes over the application process and then gets back to the business owner with the approved license. And then we updated our fees to reflect a cost recovery model and to keep it consistent through all the categories. So the key improvements that are outlined in the report is that we were able to consolidate the majority of the licenses and create one comprehensive business licensing bylaw that has regulations that are written more in plain language in order to make them more accessible. We're taking a more customer service focused approach to how we do licensing, removing some of the barriers and changing some of the fees to be more affordable. And we worked in partnership with the Love My Hood staff to ensure that we got some comments from the community groups and neighborhoods association to see how we could facilitate those groups better. So we implemented for grant recipients that needed a license to no longer pay a fee to licensing, or the recognized neighborhood associations and community groups to now be eligible for the charitable rate. And we also are looking at adapting to some of the changing landscape. So as we go through this, we've built in a 3-year review so that we can continue that conversation with some of the business owners and ensure that we're staying ahead of that trend that's happening. So our next steps for business licensing would be we're going to continue our education with both internal and external stakeholders to let them know what some of the changes are to the processes in the bylaw, as well as sending out notices to business owners, developing more of an online presence, and offering cross-divisional training so that everyone is giving out the same information. There'll be the implementation phase, which will be to create applications and toolkits and have the changes made to Amanda and public portal, hopefully ready to go for April 1st. And we want to continue to support the partners that we've developed throughout this process. So as I mentioned, we're going to have a toolkit which will be developed as part of an internal working group that we'll have available through economic developments, to the community groups, to the Small Business Center, the Uptown BIA, so everyone will have access to that. And then we'll continue to monitor and review the bylaw throughout the 3 years to make sure that it's working for businesses, community groups, and for staff. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. There are 4 people in the queue for questions, starting with Councillor Marsh.
Thank you. Great job on this report. It's really refreshing to see that we're going to have some red tape removed for the residents. A couple questions. One, just if a group wanted to have a large garage sale on private property, for example, where would that fall under? Would they be required to have a temporary vendor license or something else?
Ms. Flechter.
Through you, Chair. So depending on what type of merchandise they would be selling, they would need a special event license.
Oh, okay. Special event. That's not within our, where is, oh, here it is, 225. Okay, so it would be a special event and not a temporary vendor, potentially. Okay.
Yes.
Thanks. Then I wonder, the cost recovery model is a good one. I'm just wondering about buskers. We have a new fee, and all the fees would be $55. If a person signed up for a busker license in July, would then their renewal come up annually, or is it a calendar year? And if, yeah, so...
Okay. Through you, Chair. First. Through the cost recovery model, we can't do prorated on a cost recovery because the cost of the administration inspections would be the same whether they applied in January or July. So therefore, they would require, their license would expire March 31st, and they would require to obtain a new one by that date.
Okay, so even if they applied it and wanted one for an event in January or February, they'd have to pay the full amount and then not be able to busk after the deadline, the date.
Unless they renewed their license, yes.
Okay. That'd be something that I would ask that staff consider, looking at how can we make sure we're serving the public to the, in a reasonable way. Mm-hmm. So for buskers, what's the process once a person receives a busking license?
Yep.
Are they told where they can busk, and can you tell us a bit about how the inspectors need to inspect them?
Through you, Chair, yes. So if someone was to come in and apply for a busker license, they would fill out an application and they would be informed what the requirements are for them to obtain that license. We don't have specific locations where they can or cannot busk by address. We have it outlined as you can't be obstructing traffic or sidewalk and those kind of requirements, but not specific addresses that they can busk at.
Okay, so we don't limit the number of buskers in a particular area?
We do not.
Okay. All right, good to know. And I also just want to make note that although payday loans are regulated provincially, there is a precedent set in Hamilton to require a special license at the municipal level. And I'm just wondering if you can tell me about whether or not you looked into that and whether or not that's something that was considered for Kitchener.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Yes, we looked at payday loans specifically, and I reached out to City of Hamilton, and part of the reason that they decided to regulate them as well as the provincial legislation is because they had an oversaturation problem. So they estimate about 50 to 60 of these types of establishments in their municipality. We have about 8 to 10. So we do currently license them as permanent vendors, and they do get regular inspections by our business licensing inspector, but at this time we didn't feel that we could add any more value by making a specific schedule specific to payday loan establishments.
Okay, so just to clarify, you're saying that when you looked into it, a cursory look told you that we only have 8 to 10 payday lenders in the city of Kitchener?
That's right.
That's hard to believe. Okay, so at this point I'm not going to add, I'm not going to propose an amendment, but I'm going to ask, I'm going to look at this with staff and see if there is an opportunity at all for us to make an effective addition to this, and Chair, I would bring it forward at the appropriate time down the road. Maybe at council, but maybe
perhaps at council?
Future. Yeah,
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fernandez.
Thanks. So in your survey, how many did you have actually respond? I read through it a couple times and I thought you might mention it in your PowerPoint, but you did not.
Okay. Through you, Chair, we would have to look into that and get back to you. The response was lower than we had hoped, but I don't have the specific number.
Okay. I mean, I think it's important for us to understand, whether it was a fulsome response in terms of our businesses across the city, or was it, it's the squeaky wheel, or was it, small business, or was it the kind of business like what Councillor Marsh was talking about, who are maybe concerned that they'll lose their license if they don't speak out, that kind of thing. I'd appreciate that. In the past, how long did it take for a business to get a business license? What was the process?
Through you, Chair. So the process, I would guess, I don't have exact numbers because we put that onus back on the applicant. They would come into the licensing services area, they would pick up an application, and we would tell them what city divisions they have to go speak to, and then they would have to go organize all those inspections and go see all the different people themselves. And then once the inspections were all completed, they would come back to licensing services. We would review all those inspections and then either issue the license or take the next step.
So your hope is through this whole review that you'll see a significant streamlining of this, because I think that's especially important around our small business people who want to get, have the funds and are excited about starting a business and get them on the ground. So that was my point on that one. So in looking at the fees, originally I had looked at it the wrong way around and was thinking we'd increased all of these fees. Are you hoping that the new fees that you're setting, because some of them have seen a bit of a reduction, and I'm sure that people who own the pet shops will see a reduction, that this will this incentivize them to connect with a BIA, or where do you see the benefit to reducing some of the fees?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. So in talking with a lot of businesses, especially some of the smaller ones, they found the cost of some of the licensing to be a little too prohibitive for them, as well as some of the temporary vendors who previously, if they wanted to hold an event in Kitchener, if they were here for 4 days versus 3 days, it was upwards of $1,500 for them to obtain a license, which they were finding it difficult to do. So we thought by doing the cost recovery model and adjusting the fees, that these fees would also help attract and retain some of the businesses and bring some of the neighborhood groups into actually applying for licensing.
Okay. One of the issues we had, and I'm trying to think if it was a year ago or two, there was a community person who came in and talked about this Mom to Me market that she was hosting, and it was becoming very prohibitive by the time she paid her fee for Bingamans and everything else. Is the concerns that she raised at that time reflected in the review that we have done here? And maybe you can point out where those changes are.
Sure. Through you, Chair. So the example that I used of the temporary vendor, that's the license that I think they were Mom to Mom group would have been applying for. So because they wanted to do it a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the cost of a license would have been $1,500 versus the change now that would be about $225.
Okay, that's really great. I'm glad to hear that we heard those, and it's been a while yet since that came forward, but that we're including that. I don't see any other concerns with this, and I don't think Councillor Marsh moved it. No, I'm willing to move the motion as recorded in the report.
Very good. We have 5 people in the queue still. Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Chair Davey. My questions are, I do apologize, I was doing some signatures, so in case some of these questions may have been mentioned already. So I see that almost the majority of the fees here are reduced significantly. So how are we recuperating these costs? Is it coming out of legislative budget, or how are we offsetting these costs? Because I'm sure not everything is cost neutral.
Through you, Chair. So through going through the cost recovery, we found that the majority of the revenues that we collect are from the renewal of business licenses, not from new licenses being generated. So with the way the new fee structure is, the renewal fees still cover the majority of the revenues, and if we were to get the exact same number of licenses, there would actually be a 5% increase to the revenues.
Okay, this looks terrific. My other question is in regards to with the new fees here being proposed, how are we compared to our neighboring communities such as Cambridge and Waterloo? Are we a lot more competitive now?
Through you, Chair, these are very comparable to both Waterloo, Cambridge, as well as Hamilton and Guelph.
Okay, excellent work. I'll make a comment when the time's appropriate.
Okay, very good. I just point out too, there is more on I was actually surprised too, pardon me, on the finance side, but on page 512, after all the reductions, the revenues says on there, there's a little more information that's projected to be 5% greater, so that's good news. Councillor Yudesky.
I'm glad to see this come forward, and I know some businesses have complained to me of the tedious process and going to different departments or agencies or whoever needs for approval is time consuming. From what I gathered from reading it, does this give me and I know you mentioned that you get an application form, you provide them with an outline of what they have to do, depending on the type of business, etc., where they have to go, and then all the various steps, and it takes a period of time to do it. Depends on how quickly they run, and how many issues and stumbling blocks they run away, because sometimes they've got to satisfy something with the fire department, or satisfy something with the planning department, or whatever. With this system, once they've got an application, completed it, and submitted it to you, that's where I would assume it's going to go, would you then be circulating it, as I would understand, to all the appropriate departments at the same time? So this way, when planning's working on it, fire department's working on it, clerk or legal, they're all doing their thing, and it all comes back to you. Is that the intent, whereby the owner does not have to do any running around, you just maybe touches base with you to see how things are coming along or what has to be done?
Through you, Chair, yes, through the Amanda system it would be automated, so the application would get scanned into the Amanda system and the appropriate city division would be contacted, letting them know that there is a pending application. So everyone would receive it simultaneously.
Okay, and if there's an issue with the fire department or something like that, they would then contact the owner and say, hey, listen, you have to do this to satisfy my release back to you. Is that how that would happen, or would it be coming back to you and then you got to contact them?
No, that's correct. So the department or division themselves would contact the business owner and either schedule an inspection if they need to actually go out to the business to inspect, or would advise them of any issues that arise with the application.
Okay, and that sounds good, because I remember dealing with stuff like this, and it's just such a tedious process, and the applicant, it was just always, oh, geez, I got to go through all this, and it just becomes very more of a nightmare for them. So I'm glad to see this, and plus that with the price reduction, I'm not too sure whether there'll be less work for you. I'm assuming it'll still probably be about the same. That's what I would gather. But I think it's in a step in the right direction, because I think you'll have much more happier business people out there and individual residences, depending on the nature of the license that they're applying for. So that's well done.
Thank you. Councillor Singh?
Yes, thank you. I have a bit of a comment and a question. I think the question was more related to non-for-profit organizations, and this is something that you yourself actually assisted me with. So that has been incorporated the way it was explained earlier, that even organizations that may not have a not-for-profit status, but again, the nature of their business is as such, like community centers, that they would get the lower rate. Is that correct?
Through you, Chair. Yes, so if they're a recognized community group or neighborhood association, they would be eligible for the charitable fee.
Excellent. That's glad to hear. So that was a significant missing link in our past practice. I'll just loop back in for comment, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Gallery-Seelock?
Yeah, a couple questions. Sorry, I had to step out, so I'm sorry if these were already answered. To go back to the buskers, specifically, why would the renewal fee need to be the same as the new fee if it's the same busker asking?
Through you, Chair, why would the fee be the same for the renewal? The time to administer and do any inspections on the busker license would be the same. There would be no change in the renewal. So if they had to submit a police clearance check with their application, they may have to do the same for their renewal, so that inspection cost and the administration cost doesn't change.
I just figured it would be in the computer and you'd just have to change the dates and then they would have their license, right?
So they get an annual license.
Right.
So every year they have to renew that license.
No, I understand that. I'm just saying that if they've already brought forth all the data that they needed and so you would have it already in your computer, why would the cost be the same?
So the cost for the regulations are the same for renew and new. So just because we're doing a cost recovery, it would be the same cost for a new or a renewal license. It would be the same amount. So if for some reason they needed less requirements for the renewal, then the fee would have been reduced.
Okay, I'm not sure we're getting at what I'm trying to get at, but I'll talk to you afterwards about it. It's not overly material right now. I wanted to check with regards to the definitions between the stationary and the pop-up farmers markets. I wasn't getting a clear understanding of the difference. Like if a pop-up is like once a week, they're going to be in the exact same location. Is that considered a pop-up?
Through you, Chair, yes. So a pop-up market, if they were at the same location and they were operating for 1 day a week for up to 30 days within the calendar year, that would be a pop-up farmers market.
So it's only, the requirement is 30 days?
The maximum they can operate is 30 days in a calendar year.
Okay. I just had a question with regards to the current fee for a pop-up shop. Was it really $1,541? Or sorry, yeah, $1,541?
It is.
That's crazy. And it's going down to $125?
That's right.
They're gonna be pretty excited about that. And then I wanted to touch base with regards to, we had someone come before us, I don't know, it was probably a year and a half ago now, with regards to the license that's needed to run a used goods event. What license fee would that fall under? So if, you have an organizer who's getting different people who are purchasing tables to sell their used goods, like a garage sale or something to that effect, or the mom-to-mom type things, where does that fall under?
Through you, Chair, they would now require, or they currently do, but they would now require a special event license to hold that event, which is the $225.
And that would just be for the person organizing the event?
That's right. They would give us the list of vendors that are operating at that event, but it would be one event license.
Right, but then do the vendors actually need a license as well?
They do not if they're part of the event.
Okay, I think that is all of my questions. Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gazzola?
Yes. Was this item previously on our strategic action plan, and if so, what category was it under?
Ms. Taylor?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Councillor Gazzola, this was part of the corporate business plan. I'm sorry, I couldn't tell you what category it was under. This has been slated now since 2015, if my memory serves me correctly.
Mr. Chapman, you have some additional information?
Through the chair, on page 5-11, you'll see the reference. So it was under efficient and effective city services. The strategy is referenced, and this was a specific action item.
Okay, thank you. There used to be a principle that fees should cover the cost of administration. Is that still the case? Are we recouping all of our costs?
Through you, Chair, yes, we are.
Are we making a profit?
At this point, no, we are not making a profit. We're just neutral.
Okay, and is that our principle that we're following, that they should just be sufficient to cover our costs?
Yes.
Okay. I'm still a little confused, and you answered Councillor Ioannidis on the fact that our revenues are going up. But if I look at 513, almost every one of them, if I look from current to propose, whether it's new fee or renewal fee, the current are all higher. So is it really going to produce more revenue or sufficient revenue?
Through you, Chair, the proposed fees, the renewal fees, some of them have increased from what were previously set at for the renewal fees. So that adjustment to do the cost recovery will recoup that difference between the current and the proposed fees.
Well, can you show me? Every one I look across, they're all lower.
So, for example, the auctioneer license, the beauty salon license, you'll see an increase in the renewal amount.
Well, the auctioneer, line 1, is going from 312 to 100.
That's for a new license fee, but the majority of our licenses are actually renewals. Okay. So it would be going from the $58 to the $75.
What was the other one you mentioned?
Right below the beauty salon, it would be going from $70 to $125.
Okay. So, and do they renew every year?
They do.
Yeah. Okay. One final question. Did I understand correctly, if three neighbors want to get together and have a combined garage sale, they need to get a license? Is that new, or has that always been the case?
Through you, Chair. If they do a community event and make it a community garage sale where they have food and beverages and such, they currently are being licensed, and they would continue to require a license. If it was one person holding a garage sale on their driveway, we are currently not licensing that.
Like I have seen occasions where churches will have a combined church garage sale in their church, in their basements. So are they supposed to have licenses?
Through you, Chair, they're currently obtaining a license.
Pardon?
They're currently obtaining a license for those, many of them.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councillor Etherington?
Through you, Mr. Chair, do we police the licensing of all of these licenses?
Through you, Chair, yes, we have a business licensing inspector that goes out to inspect these types of licenses. In addition, we rely on bylaw enforcement staff to take a look at some of the mobile businesses as well as any special events happening on weekends to ensure they're licensed.
Going back to the busker license, is it fair to say most buskers don't have licenses?
Through you, Chair, we've not received any information or complaints of any buskers operating without a license. Many do obtain a license currently, and any at a special event have to be invited by the special event organizers.
But if I'm walking down the street, how do I know if a busker is licensed?
Through you, Chair, our business licensing inspectors provide them with an identification card that they must be wearing at the time that they're busking.
Do they listen to the music?
They do.
Thank you.
Mayor Rabinovich.
Thank you very much. This is more a comment, if I can, than a question.
We are into comments now, so.
Okay. This is awesome. In all seriousness, I was going to start by saying this isn't April 1st, is it? But no, in all seriousness, this I was just commenting with my colleague. This turned out to be a much more positive exercise than I expected, and I think in many ways it's fair to say that Christmas has arrived early for small business in the community in terms of the many fee reductions we're seeing here, and considering that so many people consider small business as a viable career opportunity and so on for them. Being able to help in this regard by lowering our fees is no doubt going to be extremely well received. I think the other part that stands out for me, we always did the 10% reduction for our charities, and I noticed that we're also doing it for our neighborhood associations and community organizations, even if they're not charitable, but that we're also waiving the relevant fees for our groups that are getting neighborhood grants, which I think speaks to part of what we were trying to do with the neighborhood strategy, making things easier for them going forward. So kudos to you. This is a real awesome piece of work.
Thank you.
And comments, Councillor Ioannidis?
Thank you, Chair Davey. Yeah, me too. I'm very surprised on this as well. This looks like this is a really great body of work, and what really pleases me is that I think this will really help out our cottage industry of type of business, and it will also help create vibrancy. And just looking at special events and everything else, I mean, I think this is a great body of work, and I'm glad to support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think my colleagues have already said, what I wanted to say. I share their enthusiasm of what's being proposed. This is very much an economic development generator, this bylaw, to our business licensing. Small business is a cornerstone of our economy here locally, and this absolutely will foster entrepreneurial spirit. So thank you that you looked at it through that lens and very enthused and supporting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Davey. So much has already been said. I just want to say again, thanks for excellent work and for saying that we are open for business. Thank you.
Thank you.
One of the benefits of chairing is that a lot of times your questions get asked before you need to ask them, like the mom-to-mom sale. And in terms of the commenting, I'll echo what my colleagues have said. This has turned out to be very much more positive than I think anyone expected, and I would just say excellent work, and I'm happy to support. So, someone move this. I don't recall asking. Moved by Councillor Fernandez. Those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes Finance and Corporate Services Committee. We will take 5 minutes to switch over the systems, and then we'll. Sorry, 3 minutes. Well.